Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. This is the special village board meeting, April 29th. If we'd all stand, we'll have Trustee Costa lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Trustee Costa.
Present.
Trustee DeVivo.
Present.
Trustee Kajanis. Trustee Sabo.
Present.
Trustee Suisse.
Present.
Trustee Yukich.
Present.
Mayor Daley.
Present. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to hear presentations from 3 architectural firms for the new Village Hall remodeling project. Each firm will have 20 minutes to make a presentation to the village board. After each presentation, there will be a time for questions from the village board. This is a special village board meeting, therefore there will be no public comment this evening. Also, for the record, there will be no official business conducted by the village board this evening. Now let's begin with the first of our 3 firms this evening, Dewberry. The firm is represented this evening by Larry. I'm going to let you pronounce your last name. Levacek. Larry Levacek. Larry, I will let you introduce your team, and please begin your presentation when you're ready.
Good evening, Mayor. I'm Daniel Atolano. I'm principal with Dewberry Architects, and Larry's with me this evening. We're fortunate enough to work with you and be selected as the architect. Larry would be the project manager, and I would be the principal. We'd be attending meetings jointly for the most part, but you're also a tag team if one of us are sick or not available, the other one can step in. So tonight we're going to show you very quickly our presentation, and then we'll entertain questions from your
Excuse me one second. Can you hear him fairly well? Okay. Okay, good. Go right ahead.
Okay, thank you. Quick introduction. What we're showing, the image that we have there is the Romeoville Village Hall and Police Facility. Larry was the project manager on that project. And again, if we were able to work with you, he'd be in the same capacity.
Dewberry Architects is a large architecture and engineering firm. We're a nationwide firm, although we operate at regional offices. We've been in Illinois for over 50 years. We have offices in Elgin and in Peoria right now. Full service architecture and engineering. We've done over 200 municipal needs assessment projects and over 280 municipal projects. And we've gained national and regional experience and recognition with awards from both our peers and from the agencies that we represent as well too.
The image that we're showing you there is the Oswego Village Hall. I was the principal designer and project manager on that project.
Dewberry has, as a core value, concern for the environment. Whether you're going to seek LEED certification on your building or not, we think sustainability is important. We think it's essential. We think it's something that is prudent to be doing in all of our designs. So you can see that we've really dedicated our effort and resources to being a responsible partner to our environment. And by designing over 100 LEED projects, we have 160 plus LEED accredited individuals in our firm. And we're ranked 41st in the Engineering News Record Top 100 Green Design Teams. So really, we practice what we preach, and we make sure that we are upholding our environmental responsibilities.
So that's why tonight you didn't get our handout of our material. We gave you just a single piece of paper. Again, it's kind of walk the talk. We will give the village our thumb drive with our presentation on it. I also would like to mention the presentation we're showing you, we actually showed on that first interview, and we're repeating some of the same components. The image that we have there on the top is an adaptive reuse right now. It's a project that we're in design development. I'm involved in that project. It's in East Dundee, Illinois. We're taking a fire station, which is shown on the left there. We're going to convert it into a police department. And the right shows an addition onto their historic 1893 Village Hall. 5 steps that we would go through in a preliminary component, just getting started on your work, or looking at and establishing goals for the project. Those goals are around considerations of economy, function, and form and image. So for instance, on economy, the economy might be, the goal would be that we want to stay within a total project budget of X amount of dollars. We know that from day one, and it's something that we would adhere to. Other ideas that we have here, we're going to walk through and talk a little bit more about those.
So now we're going to talk about some of the facts that we know for your project. We know that there are some life safety issues that we'll have to look at before we can even begin thinking about designing. We know that there's existing ramping throughout the building. We'll have to verify and see what has to be done to upgrade that to current code standards. We know that there are some accessible toilet room facilities that are provided. We'll need to double check to make sure that they do adhere with the current codes. And as well, we also know there's a second story on this building that isn't serviced by an elevator. So there are issues with that. It becomes a mezzanine at that point. And how do you address that? How do you use that space? So these are things that just need to be investigated before you can kind of proceed with the design. In addition to looking at some of those code issues, it's evaluating the building systems. We want to make sure that the structural system, mechanical system, electrical, and plumbing are all adequate for the building. And if they're not adequate, what needs to be done to them to make them up to the current standards. So we'll take a team of engineers, we'll embed them into the building and have them look at every single component that's visible, and we'll even poke our heads above the ceiling where we can to make sure that we know exactly what the existing conditions are to the greatest extent possible to avoid any kind of unforeseen issues that could pop up later if you don't do that.
One of the things that's going to differentiate our firm from the others is we have complete in-house engineering services. So we're working with the same engineers on every project that we're working on, which really gives us, I think, a tighter package when we're putting our work out as well, whether it be from security to information technology to your standard electrical and energy services.
So when we start looking at concepts after we've kind of done that building evaluation, we know what we have to deal with. We start looking at what we like to call character-defining elements. And we know that there's a lot of character-defining elements on this building. So you've chosen a great building. It has some great architectural features to it. You start looking at the gables. Clearly you have three distinct areas to this building that anybody can identify. And also you have a main gable, actually a double gable with a stone entrance on the front. It clearly begins to be identified as an entrance to the building to anybody. So you have some good bones that you're dealing with right from the very beginning. So when we start looking at your site and facility concept, and again, you know, these are just initial kind of thoughts that we've had, and these thoughts will be expanded multiple times as we enter into conversations with you and the different staff members as to what their needs and everything are. But when we start looking at this building, we start seeing that clearly the Village Hall entry wants to be almost on that center. That's a decent concept to begin with. And that the admin area really wants to be kind of adjacent to that. Maybe the boardroom ends up being right on line with that entrance. And you might entertain taking that second floor out if you don't need that second or that additional square footage. Instead of spending money on an elevator, maybe you take that second floor out, open the volume up, which would leave you with a large two-story volume with a huge view out the back of the building onto the natural green space right out of your boardroom. You might look at the sheriff substation being on the opposite side of the building away from your public parking, basically for security reasons. You want to keep your Village Hall operations and the sheriff substation operations separate and secured. And then you might locate some of the community operations where you have some of those existing rooms. You have the banquet hall facilities, support spaces, the toilet rooms, and those spaces are ideally, you know, located right next to where the parking is too, so the community would have the shortest entrance at that point. So, you know, this is just one scheme as to how it might lay out, and it begins to give you an idea of how we would approach the process.
And again, to reiterate, the part of the process we're showing and actually the way the images are, we're zooming out, we actually would work with you and kind of trying to understand what are all the ideas that we could formulate before we get into any detail about how big is it, who's in it, and those type of things. We talk very quickly about some of the, as Larry mentioned, the character defining elements of the building, but we like the entrance to your facility that you're looking at. With the thought is we bring the outside in, the stone, maybe a little bit more of the wood form, so when you come in, there's not just a blank wall that meets you on the other side. The entrance on the exterior is very handsome. The interior, I think, we could make some improvements upon. We liked when we were looking at your website, and compliments certainly to your community about the ideas that you have there. One of them is a sense of community and inclusion. And on the image on the left is Romeoville, where we put actually a statement about their community that they use. Down on the lower right is Palos Park, project that I worked on and designed. And it's just talking, and so that glazing is actually looking into the boardroom. And it's immediate as soon as you walk into the entrance of that facility. And as you turn, it's nice always to see people to greet you, as opposed to trying to find how can somebody give you directions in the building. Public spaces, there's some great public spaces there, as Larry mentioned. At the top, of course, is their banquet facility. The bottom was an old gym, and we took it and renovated it into a banquet facility, so we understand about how those spaces can work. We actually made it into a multi-purpose flooring so that it could be used for other activities. The thought there, you have a space, you can make it work for however you want. Seniors, other groups coming in, Boy Scouts, Kiwanis Club, could be a real community space that would be more than just a banquet facility it currently is. And then an interior view of the Oswego project, and it's more about the furnishings and we have a complete interior design service that we can work with you as well if we were selected and we actually did the interiors for this project. Public art, that horse that's in the back foreground there, or background, excuse me, actually is something too that is nice for local artists that you could have on display in the building. Circulation, looking at the hallways, how can we make them bigger? Right now they're pretty, they're running just the length of the building. Quick illustrations, the top there is the Livingston County Historic Courthouse, 1875. Last year we won the Landmark Illinois Historic Restoration Award. There's 12 given in the state. It's a very high prestigious award. It was a project that I worked on, and we took an old corridor and we made it nicer. The bottom is showing something very simple. It's an old middle school, converted it into a community center. Again, new lighting, new flooring, new ceiling panels, and you take something that's institutional and you give it a little bit different lift on that. So some economical, some a little bit more costly, but ways to look at. The boardroom, we're not here to tell you how the boardroom's gonna look at. We're gonna make it the way you want it to work. So I put on here tailored versus loose fit. At Oswego, they wanted a slope floor, fixed seat space, whereas in the upper left there, they were showing for Romeoville, the bottom there is Shanahan, another project that I worked on. It really reflects more about how the community and the trustees and the mayor want to have that room set up and what they could use it for. Meeting spaces, there are spaces in that existing building right now on the upper left there that could be nice meeting spaces, as we show on the right, that could be used for conferences for trustees or others, people coming into the community, developers, as well as just a small individual spaces you would have for staff. The administration, again, some elements that are in there, we don't know how we would use them because we haven't spoken to you enough to know what that might be, but we do know that there is some spaces in there that certainly could be used. And we've done similar ideas about what Larry mentioned, the ceiling actually being vaulted. That's Palos Park, open space in the middle where staff work. On the far end there is a conference room, and other illustrations of how we could do interior furniture. From new furniture, we worked with furniture dealers that use refurbished furniture, so you get about 50% discount on your product, and they guarantee it as well. But you're getting all new fabric and then all new painting on there, so everything looks new. As far as the staff lounge, all the things, it's as open as it closed. We want it to be more than just a room that has a kitchen and some counters and appliances in there. The bottom there, the full image is the Livingston County Law and Justice Center, $17 million project that I worked on a couple years ago, and we really made it a little more contemporary, but it's a space we know that is important for certainly our office, any group of people that you want for activities, just socializing informally. High density storage, you can't put enough in your building. We know that you've got a basement. That might be an opportunity to use high density storage. The upper portion there is showing we took the basement of the new Law and Justice Center in Pontiac and we put in storage down in the bottom. On the right is a PD that I did for Pingree Grove, and the bottom on the lower left is Oswego. Oswego, we actually put it in the attic, so when you look at that building, all that area underneath the gable, it's movable storage. And they put it in as a bid alternate, and the bids came in low, they took it. So the idea, even if you don't put it in from day one, plan on it so that you can do it.
So some of the needs that you have, when you start looking at the boardroom and the village hall needs, we know that you're looking at, you have about 10,000 square feet or so in this building. And you would be looking at similar needs or possibly more needs, and those are things we'll have to investigate and try to figure out and drill down into and figure out exactly how much square footage that you need. It's important to determine that, to know if you have too much space, if you have too little space, how you're going to allocate it, what things are going to be phased in different areas, things like that.
The chart that we have here on the upper right, it's really showing you what we've done in other communities, not that those are the right answers or wrong, but there's some similarities in size to what you have. And we'd like to have that information, so when the public asks, well, why is this space going to be this size, and why do we have, it's more of a norm, it's what you would expect. I counted, you've got about 80 seats in here right now. I said 85 is just an average. So again, these are just starting points, they're not necessarily meant to be the end all of it. As far as proposed facilities, we might create a shopping list, if you will, of improvements that we could do to your facility. And this is an example of the middle school. Yeah, we had projects that added up to $2.9 million. The owner only had $500,000, so we took 4 projects, and that's what made it a success as far as when we were all said and done.
So the question ultimately will come down to why us tonight. We think Dewberry has great past experience with projects that really are geared exactly towards what your project is right now. Whether it's municipal law enforcement with the police substation, we have an enormous amount of experience in that. We understand it. 90% of our clients are government clients throughout our entire company. So we're used to dealing with government agencies. We understand the processes, and that's how we're successful at doing that. We have full in-house services that allows us to control the process to the greatest extent. What does that mean to you? The best quality control that you can get. I'm not having to call an outside consultant to see if their drawings are going to come 2 days from now. My structural engineer's 2 cubicles down from me, so I know exactly what he's doing on a day-to-day basis. You'll also benefit from the fact that I'm the operations director at our office, so I'm in charge of all the staffing, and I will know exactly what everybody in the office is doing on a day-to-day basis regardless. And we're also an award-winning AE firm that speaks a lot for the end product that we give you. And like I said before, these awards aren't from just the architecture industry, they're from municipal governments, they're from police, they're from fire, they're from law and justice. So we're being recognized by your peers as well as our peers, which means a lot to us, because it shows that we're doing our job. And the last reason why us is because we really want to work with Glen. We have a philosophy in our office, in our company, that we like to develop relationships, not just do projects. And you can see from some of our projects, with Romeoville being a perfect example. I've been working with Romeoville since 2005 and still continue to do that. And I've done their village hall, their police station, their fire station, their post office. We've done the community center. I've remodeled their old village hall and their police station. So the projects just keep going. And the reason they keep coming back to us is because of that relationship. So that's kind of our philosophy, and that's how we like to work.
Okay, great. Nice presentation. You guys want to have a seat so you don't have to stand while we're asking questions? We're just going to go right down the lane here. I'll bounce back and forth and then randomly call on a trustee. As far as the presentation goes, I've seen the presentation. I chaired the committee that was the selection process down to the 3 finalists. Pretty much all my questions have been asked. I think you recall my questions were basically square footage wise. I asked this question from every one of the firms. What did you think it would cost? At our last meeting, one of the trustees came up with, he thought it was ridiculous the amount of money that would be spent. But when I asked this question, every single firm said that depending upon what you want in this building, will be somewhere between $100 a square foot to approximately $150 a square foot. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a fair assumption.
Okay.
Kind of like I said at our last meeting, there's one thing that architects really don't have control over ultimately, and that's what the market, the construction cost is. And that's why you're really getting the same number from everybody. It's because that's what the construction market's holding right now.
Right.
There were times that the number was creeping down more towards the 100 range. Right now, it's actually starting to creep up a little bit. And, we keep track of those trends on all the projects that we do, and we keep track of it with we have a full-time cost estimator who's been with our company for 30 years, who's highly accurate, understands all of the disciplines that we have in-house because he deals with them on a day-to-day basis. So when we start putting together cost estimates, we're already ahead of the game because our cost estimator understands the team already, so he knows the product we're giving them.
Thank you. And then the other thing that I pretty much got from almost every single firm for the benefit of the trustees here tonight and also the public watching this is that the ideal time to hit this project is the first part of the winter. That it's an indoor project. You'll have very competitive bids as a result of people, carpenters, what have you, wanting to work indoors in the wintertime.
Absolutely, Mayor. That's 100% right, because typically everybody's looking for start of construction in the spring, so they're looking for that bidding over the winter. This project would be best to be bid in the fall, so that you're ready to start, as you mentioned, in the colder elements, and honestly, it'd be a better bid time as well.
Okay. And then the final one that I recall talking about is it's a little difficult to put a time frame on something because we don't have the layout at this point. It can be sooner than later or a little bit longer based upon the layout that the trustees eventually decide they'd like to see in the building. So with that being said, I talked with you guys at the committee level. I get it. I'm going to turn it over to trustees. I'm just going to sort of bounce around so we don't go in a straight line. The head of our Parks and Recreation Committee, Marcia DeVivo, why don't you start it out?
Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation. I especially like the letter that you sent out commenting on current building codes and zoning regulations. It's something that I don't know that we were really thinking about at the time. I look at that building and I think this is a real challenge. I know that it has the gables and it looks nice from the outside, but therein lies the problem on the inside. The fireplace in that one room, what would you think to do with something like that? Would that can that be removed? I mean, what do you see there?
It could absolutely be removed.
Yeah,
that's
it could be.
an option. It's not a structural load-bearing
Okay.
element.
I
In
didn't-
addition to being an architect, I'm also a structural engineer
Okay.
as well too. So whenever
Good,
I walk
good.
through these buildings, I'm doing it, looking at
Yeah.
the building with that in mind. But the obvious thing for most architects would be to walk in there and say, you have this huge stone feature element. That's going to be something you want to use in your primary space, your boardroom, right? And, of course, we had the same thought as well, too. But as we started doing some evolutions in our head, we really kind of started to gravitate away from that in a lot of ways because it's in a difficult location. It's kind of in the side.
Yeah.
It doesn't really align with the room that well. And also that room isn't one of the larger rooms as well
Right.
either. So that's what kind of led us to that initial concept where we were potentially taking out that second floor and moving the boardroom there. And if we moved the admin space there, that could become a feature inside an admin reception area, which would be a really nice feature. It would be located where a lot of the public would see it. It would be right outside your administrative offices and the mayor's offices, which gives it a little bit of grandeur that it kind of needs. It's already an existing element, so you can't be criticized for building a new fireplace. It's there. If anything,
pretty,
you're using it, you're reusing and adapting it, which is the right environmental thing to do. So it's a wise choice. And I think those are the type of things you have to look at in the design. You don't always go to the most obvious decision or the obvious choice. You have to look beyond that and really kind of drill down into what the creative opportunities are and other uses for it. And there could be another one. That was just one that kind of came into us as we were walking through the space.
The amount of windows that are in there, I see that as a huge challenge also. It's gorgeous, but trying to break it up into walls. I know I've worked in enough large buildings that's what they do, and they put a wall in the middle of a window, and it's
Correct.
difficult, very difficult. How do you see that
I
working?
think if we kept with an open plan along that glazing, so just to your point, we might look at the offices more on the perimeter, maybe even a little non-traditional, away from the windows, so
Right,
that
right.
if you have 12 people that are able to have the outdoor views and the sunlight coming in, that's better than having one person or 3 people.
Yeah.
So I think part of your question is, how would we lay that space out? And if it didn't make sense, take the chimney out or take the fireplace out. You know, let's make it what it's going to be in the future for many years.
Yeah.
It was something obviously in its initial life, but that may not fit the best for the village.
The other question that I have is the hallways. They take up a lot of space. They're very wide. Does it make sense? I mean, would you consider trying to make those hallways narrower? And I know they're load-bearing walls. It would seem like it'd be extremely difficult to do that. Would it be cost prohibitive? I mean, have you looked at that at all?
We haven't done an investigation, but I already had assumed that the majority of those interior walls, those corridor walls, were probably load-bearing at that point. We would have to look at the trusses and see if they were aligning with panel points and what modifications would have to happen to the trusses for that. But a lot of times, wood structure is kind of a forgiving structure to work in. And if you were going to be moving a wall, what you would typically do is you would put up a temporary bearing wall while you would remove that one and move it. If you were simply going to be moving it a couple feet and it just required some additional structural modifications to the trusses above it, then you'd be putting that wall in place while you leave the existing bearing wall and move that. Of course, then you have to track those loads down, and that's where sometimes the cost comes in, because you might have to reinforce the floor structure to move those loads to where they were intended in the original spot. So usually things tend to line up through buildings.
Becomes complicated, yeah.
It could.
That was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee DeVivo. Trustee Yukich?
Can you provide a specific example of a remodeling project? Because we don't have to do anything to the outside of the building, we're strictly doing it to the inside. And with what kind of changes do you feel have to be made? You've gone through the building, so I see by your picture you've got it set up to where the administration would be on the east side of the building, and then the sheriff's substation on the outside, which would also cause you'd have to put an addition on the building because there's not enough building there.
Actually, what we were gonna do, trustees, we were gonna look at possibly taking that area right now, it's used for food storage, and the coolers are in that area, maybe gutting that and redoing also the exterior of the building, so that it might actually become something that it isn't right now. I know you can go down to the lower level from there as well, from the stairs, so to try to take what's there so we don't have to put necessarily an addition on, but that if it was necessitated and you would need it, absolutely. And it's one of those things, I don't think we got our arms around it enough to be able to say one way or the other. But the thought is trying to use every square foot that you have there efficiently. There's a lot of space in there, as you know, even on the other side of the building that's set up for food service and storage. You know, how can we take that with those corridors and not necessarily leave corridors, leave it the configuration it is, but just kind of think about it, step back and say best use from the visitor, citizen, as well as staff.
Okay.
Right. I mean, at this point, we had to make some assumptions based on no information about what the square footages could be for the sake of that diagram. Obviously, when we go through a programming exercise and find out or verify what the square footage requirements are for every department, every use in the building, then that's going to start to really dictate how you end up laying out this building. And there's going to be multiple concepts, multiple ways to do that. And some of them will have certain strengths and some of them will have other strengths. And those are the type of discussions that occur during that concept design phase.
Right, so right now, you have nothing written in stone of this is how the building is going to be designed.
Oh, absolutely
This is just
not.
guesstimating of what we're looking at.
Absolutely.
Like I said, it was really an example to show how that process begins. Where we start breaking down the building into components like that and seeing how it can be rearranged. And, a lot of times we will actually come with the plan and we will cut out building blocks of the shapes of the building, and we'll use it as an interactive model right there, and we'll shift stuff around with you to see how it works. That way it becomes interactive with your staff. We're getting your input, we're getting it, and we'll record it and document it so that you become a part of the process.
Okay. The other question I had is, right now I'm looking into seeing if we can keep the golf course open for 2 more years, well, this year and next year. So we have someone that can maintain the property. If we decided to use the west side where you have a cutoff wall, because it is basically 2 separate buildings that we're looking at, would that interfere with you working on the side for the village hall?
It's hard to say whether or not it would. I think there's always a potential where it could interfere with it. Whenever you start having a separate space where you have a public entity that's dedicated to one side, and you're trying to phase construction activity into it, you're really all of a sudden entering a third party into it. You're not just keeping the public separation from your village hall operations. Now all of a sudden you have public entity, village hall operations, and construction activities. And when you start breaking up your building into and creating a phasing plan where you're trying to maintain operations and you're trying to work in this building while you have contractors who are staging outside the building, they're staging inside the building, and there's temporary construction walls, it can be cumbersome to try and accommodate that.
For the village or for the other business that would be in there?
For all the above.
Because
Yeah, it can affect, I'm not saying that it can't be done, it would be something that would have to be looked at very carefully, and you would have to come up with a really careful phasing plan to implement that.
Well, the reason I ask is, the mayor just got done saying that we plan on doing this over the winter. Golf course isn't open over the winter, so it should be no problem
Right.
interfering with him.
Right.
So I just wanted to see if,
And you're right, part of it is, we don't understand enough, but I think the answer, the other part of the equation is, yes, we could do that, and maybe there's some give and take that would happen on the village side, maybe not everybody would move in, we don't know how much square footage you need, we don't know how much square footage is there, so we would evaluate that, and we could develop it where, phase 1, you move in just on that end of the building, and phase 2, you take the other part once the golf operations are out of there, and, and we'll figure out also where the sheriff would work in there, so, absolutely, that is one scenario. The other scenario is you move everybody in, so I think you look at both options if that's what your decision the village would like us to look at.
the reason the reason that is that's the exact way he did it. He built the one side,
Okay.
then finally finished it up, built the banquet halls, and then went back and redid the
Sure.
interior, so.
And you saw that project I showed, that middle school, we did phase 1, we didn't use the upper level, and it's just really, it'll kind of work itself out, but it definitely is something that could be doable.
Okay. Yeah, because we're looking for the input from the village too. We'd like the residents to be involved in this, organizations, because if we are doing a community center, let's find out what they want. Right now, our main concern is the village hall because we're paying rent here, we'd like to get out. So, thank you.
Okay, trustee Suisse?
Hi, very good presentation, thank you. I was just wondering, who do you go to get your concepts from? Do you talk to all the staff? Do you talk to board members? Do you get a feel for everybody? Do you come to meetings and ask?
Absolutely. It starts at the very beginning. We actually will send out surveys to individual departments, and those surveys ask key questions that we've developed over the time, so we get a better understanding before we even meet with anybody. We'll
Okay.
get this information back. So we have an idea of what the staffing requirements are. We know what their existing space requirements are. And then when we meet with them, then we start drilling down into more detail, more levels of detail. What things are working for them? What things are they going to need? What are their future growth plans? And from there, then we start moving into potential concepts, and those potential concepts are going to be based off that programming information. What are the key adjacencies between spaces? Does admin need to be next to the main entrance? So everything just kind of gets tied together and moves along that process. And through every step of the process, we always include everybody in the process. Our designers never come to a meeting with designs that they have developed in a vacuum. That would be irresponsible.
We would
in my
talk to your
opinion.
stakeholders. So if the
Absolutely.
stakeholder is the sheriff's department, the stakeholder is your community, recreation folks, your senior citizens, the village, anybody else that we could, so it might be one-on-one, it might be as a small group of them, or as staff, it might be at my department. So you bringing all that together, the best world, what could it be? And we really want to start from the master plan. If we had unlimited funds, what we would make this building? And then we'll work it into something that is doable and achievable within the limits and constraints that you might have. So it really is to come up with the best solution for all the folks that you want us to be involved in. And it could be the existing golf people we talk to as well, obviously operations of it.
So you provide more than just a two-dimensional plan, sometimes 3D and computer enhancements,
Yes.
so everybody can get a better feel
Absolutely.
of things like that?
Everything we do in our company is done in a program called Revit, which is a 3D building information modeling system. So we're able to, we're not just really drawing your building on a piece of paper, we're actually constructing it in a 3D virtual environment. So at any given time, we can not only show you plans and elevations, but we can show 3D mock-ups of it. We can actually do flybys and walkthroughs through the building.
Oh, nice.
And even
Okay.
during the design concept, we use another program, which is more of a strictly modeling program that's a 3D program. So we're able to take that in meetings and actually fly around and pan around it and move things in and out and change the shape of things. So we use a lot of three-dimensional tools because we know as architects, naturally, architects think three-dimensionally already. When we start looking at a plan, we just envision it, but we realize that most people can't do that. So we need to bring these tools to the table so that you get a full understanding of it, because the last thing we want to do is have you walk into your building after it's done and say, I didn't think it was going to be like this, you know, and you'll have a good idea when you walk into it. In fact, some of the images that we come up with are so close to the real product at the end, you almost can't tell what's a rendering and what's a photograph.
Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Sabo?
Okay, I had a few questions. First of all, there was a chart in your presentation. And can you name some of the municipalities that were in there, and can you give us prices? You say they were similar to ours, so, or space-wise. So can you give us some figures?
Sure, Oswego Village Hall is in there. We bid that project as two different separate pack. We did a base bid and we did an alternate. The prices came in so low, they built a shell. They actually built the alternate, which is 48,000 square feet for the total building. Everything is relative to time. That was built 2007, I believe we ended up. And if I'm round numbers, it was about an $8 million project for construction costs.
One of the projects at the Romeoville Village Hall and Police Station, you know, that was, I would say, a much larger building because it was a dual building like that. It was actually 118,000 square feet. But one of the reasons we wanted to show it is because that was on a 43-acre site, which is similar to the kind of area that you have with a golf course. And the way that we looked at that project and sited the building and designed the building features to take advantage of the natural views and the contours and the grading of the land was kind of important. So it was a master planning exercise that we wanted to show that we had the expertise to as well. Now that project was, for the 118,000 square feet, was $30.5 million. And I think the Village Hall side of it was approximately 56,000 square feet, and the police side was about 65,000 square feet. To give you an idea where they came from, the police moving into that 65,000 square feet came from a pre-engineered metal building that was 12,000 square feet. That was the building that we remodeled after the fact into the Historical Society and Chamber of Commerce. And that was done on a shoestring budget. We basically went in there, it was a design build exercise. I believe it was around just a little over $1 million to renovate that building and put those spaces in there at that time.
Okay, and who visited the building before you made your proposal?
Oh, you mean your
Yeah, who visited, were you in the building itself?
yeah, both of us have been in the building.
Both of you, okay.
Yeah.
You mentioned the elevator, and that you would need an elevator if you were to use the second floor. So let's say that we do that. Prices of elevators and the type of elevator would be important. So is that a doable thing? And
It's absolutely a doable thing, and there are different varieties of elevator. There's more of a residential type one that would be for a much lower use cycle, and that may be if you had a limited use up in that area that that's dedicated to primarily for village hall use, that may be the route that you would go instead of putting a full normal commercial passenger elevator that's like 2,500 pound capacity. If you were looking at the commercial grade elevator, it would be probably about $250,000 to put it in place with the foundation and everything like that. If you're looking at residential, you're probably looking somewhere between $80,000 to $100,000.
Well, if the public weren't using that space, if it was just used by the staff or for storage or something, it's still a requirement.
Yes, because it's the discrimination, you know, it would be if somebody got hurt and they were in that capacity, you had to go up there, now you say, well, you can't go in there because you're not, able to walk up the stairs, that would be discriminating, so a lot of
Okay.
this is, it's really based on independent of public, it's really staff.
It's the ADA guidelines that
Right,
really drive
ADA
it.
compliant.
Yes.
The entranceway, do you find that as advantageous? Is it usable, is some part of it usable for something else? It's quite a large entrance.
The entrance lobby itself? Yeah, obviously and it really kind of depends on the function that you're going to be putting in that area. If you were going to go with a boardroom option, like what we were proposing in that concept, then you would probably want a larger space because you would be holding people outside that boardroom at any given time. So it becomes kind of that overflow space. Now, if you're putting a different function in there, say the admin moves in that area, then you don't need all that area up there, and it could be reduced in size. In fact, it should be reduced in size.
What did you find there were some disadvantages?
Some disadvantages of it is right now.
Yes,
Well,
disadvantages to work with, to make
think-
it workable.
I think the grade change through the building is
The what?
The grade change.
the ramps.
The ramp through the one corridor is probably the biggest obstacle. I think the fact that there are bearing walls in it that you have to deal with. Obviously, if it was a steel superstructure and you can just go in and gut the interior without having to worry about those bearing walls, that's always a challenge because when you start your design, you've identified those things through your building survey, and now you have those knowns. So you're incorporating those into your design concepts, or you're identifying where you need to make modifications to accommodate certain design features. And you always want to try and limit those because that drives up the cost in your building. But sometimes the design necessity, the program requirements may overweigh leaving something in place, and you have to modify it.
I realize that price is based on what we do, or what, we do, but on that chart, I mean, so there were some differences between usages but they were basically the same size building. So if you have a range that you could give us, is there anything that,
The amount of square footage that you would need, is that, is that
well, I'm talking about cost.
cost? Again, I'm gonna go back to kind of what we talked about initially, and right now, at this point, it's ballpark. I mean, anybody comes in and tell you it's a solid number, good luck. It's a range, because there's so many unknowns that we're talking about, from who's using it, to where are we coming in, and what are we modifying, that I think that if you stay within that 100 to 150, so if you said 125, obviously that's kind of the middle of it, but it's hard to say anything more than that at this point, just because we haven't done enough interaction with you to understand even what that means to, how we might be modifying that building.
Okay, you would give us some options if, so it would involve price. If we wanted to do this, we could do that. If we, and so forth, so that we could plan for the future and not, maybe not do everything right away.
Absolutely.
If we were thinking about cost.
Yes, without a
Okay,
doubt. That's why
thanks.
the master plan, we could phase into that master plan.
And phase it in.
We're gonna think about the growth of your community as well, as you're mentioning.
And the growth.
Yes.
Right. Thank you.
Another thing that we do to control costs is a lot of times we will put alternate design work into a project. So if you have a room that you want renovated, but you're not sure if it's going to be in the budget, we can break that work out as an alternate bid, and you can see what that alternate bid comes in. Because a lot of times, if you say you're going to do the entire building, you usually get a better square foot cost in construction than you do if you're only doing half the building. So just because of the economy of scale. So many times, if you're unsure of the budget, you're right up at the cap, and you're not sure if you're gonna be able to get something or not. We can build some of those features into it, so you can pick and choose certain things to make sure that you hit your budget. It's just kind of another safety valve.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee K. Janice?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Very nice presentation. Thank you for being here, and congratulations being one of the three here with us tonight. It says a lot about your organization. First question, if I may. What attributes do you see on this building right now that benefit us?
It's a handsome building. I mean, when you walk, you know, we just, even if you don't, as a golf course, independent of what that is right now, it has a nice image to it, I think, which is part of the civic pride that you would have as a golf course, as a community center, as a village hall, as whatever that may be. I think that it's a new building. It's not very old. The systems in there, yeah, they're residential type more, but you know what? You just replace them. They're very efficient, and it's not a lot of cost, and it allows a lot of people too within your community to bid on it, because it is more of a residential construction. So it's somewhat, even though we were talking about the challenges of some of the things, I think certainly those are outweighed by the positives that building has. The parking's there. You've got wonderful green space, great location. It just has, you know, we work with so many buildings that are challenged so much well beyond what anything could be even labeled on that building, that it's an outstanding. We were excited when we saw it because of what it is and then what you're talking about making it. The two are very compatible. It's not Herculean feat to do it.
You know, our building assessment investigation would definitely go and really kind of get into the inside of the building to determine if there are any issues with the structure or the mechanical systems, the major systems, because that's where you can start spending dollars that you didn't anticipate. Those are dollars that you have to spend that don't go towards your renovation. What I can say is, you know, from first glance, I've been through the building twice, and as I said, I always look at things not only architecturally but structurally. I'm not seeing any signs of drywall cracking. I'm not seeing any irregular floor areas, differential settlement in slabs. I'm not seeing settlement cracking in the corners of your foundation. I'm not seeing signs of water infiltration anywhere, which means that your roofing system is probably intact. The building looks well maintained. It looks clean. You're not seeing areas of paint peeling on the exterior or anything like that. So when you start just looking at it visually for the first time, you're not seeing major things that are popping out and glaring at you that say "fix me," which is a good sign. That shows the building probably has good bones.
Okay, very good. One trustee asked the question already, so I'll skip that one. Save some time. What you laid on the floor, I know that's just a prelim, that's a conceptual plan, but will that conceptual plan encourage 10, 15, 20 years from now, allow us to expand if necessary the property, or is it something that we're gonna have to do another clean slate over?
No, we would build that just exactly what you're hitting on. I mean, absolutely, you know, we would make, what's nice is you have the gable forms all aligned, so you can put another gable form coming in at an intersection there and expand out towards the golf course now, or the terrace that's there. So nothing that we were talking about would make anything, because I can't imagine that the boardroom is gonna be anything that's really too tailored. It's gonna be a flexible space that one day it may be that, something in 10 years it could be something else. I think we would get to, as best we can through your binoculars, to look into the future, to understand what that would mean, so that when we come up with the design collectively, it's gonna be a design that it's gonna serve you well now, but in 20 years, it's gonna give you the flexibility to exactly what you said. It's not gonna back you in, so we're not gonna put the utilities or reroute things that we gotta tear up because we wanna put a foundation in the future. We're gonna think about those things long-term, how the services come in, because water lines, underground utilities are always a big killer. And we don't, you know, where they're coming in, they may limit us on where we're gonna expand the building. But other areas are gonna give you more opportunity to do it. So I don't see that necessarily. I think good planning and good thinking, forward thinking, is gonna keep us out of that puzzle.
Right at that early stage when we're talking with staff and we're finding out what their current conditions are, their space needs, and then what we do is we start identifying future space needs. And we'll identify a growth, a 5-year, a 10-year, a 15 20. Sometimes we've even gone up to 30 years, which is really a stretch for most people to do that. But when you start doing that and you start looking at where those square footages are adjusting from department to department, then you can start looking at, is a department going to shrink in 10 years? Because the functions are going to change in that. Maybe somebody's going to telecommute. Is another department going to grow because you're going to expand that area, like GIS mapping maybe? So when you start looking at those areas, then you start looking at the square footage that you have in your building. And like Daniel said, if you don't have the square footage in your building, then you start looking for opportunities outside the building. And you plan for that right from the very beginning. Because if you don't plan for that, then it becomes difficult to do later on.
And that leads me right into my next question. With our current staff now, knowing that there's going to be expansion of where we're at now, could you see the physical plant that's currently over at Woodbine on the let's call them 4 walls? Have you, you alluded to staffing and future needs. Have you taken a look at what we have today versus what we need tomorrow and done any kind of needs analysis or worked with staff on needs analysis on conference rooms, mayor's office, director's offices, or any other directors or staff offices? And how does that fit into what you had on your plan on the wall?
Currently, we have not had the opportunity to meet with anyone. So
Okay.
we have no idea what your needs are. That would be priority number one, would be to come in, do that building assessment, and to find out what those needs are. Because that really is the foundation for the entire project that moves forward. And if you don't have good information for those two things, if you don't have an understanding what your building is and what your space needs are, there's no way you can have a successful project. So that would obviously be a number one priority. Now, what we do know is that Homer Glen's been, a very financially prudent community, and you do outsource a lot of your functions right now. And I would anticipate that maybe some of those outsourced functions become insourced as you grow. And those things are things that we would have to find out through the discussions, because I would anticipate those would be huge growth areas for you.
We're kind of like a doctor, though. We got to run a series of tests on the village before we can
Right.
tell you what we need to do to you. We can't just look at a group and say, I couldn't, in a way, I put that chart up there. I think you're about 10,000 square feet, just as a starting point. But we may determine that you need 14. You may determine you need 8. So a lot of that's just ballpark. It's just the initial thoughts that we have.
And I'm doing a facility needs study on a federal building in downtown New Orleans right now that's 225,000 square feet. It's a 10-story building. And as I went through all those tenants and we're interviewing them and finding their space needs, ironically, what I found out is almost every tenant said over the next 5-10-year needs, we're going to need less space because more people are going to be working from home. We can hotel people. Some people are only in the office 3 days a week. Some people are in 2 days a week. They can share a cubicle. So everybody's kind of looking at a downsizing strategy in that building right now, as opposed to increasing, even though their services may be technically increasing. So you never quite know until you really kind of drill down into it and find out how the people are going to plan on doing their staffing, how they're going to do their work. We don't know how you do your work, which is why we need to ask you and find out how you're going to do your operations.
And we are a customer-driven business as well. Our customers happen to be residents. That's the difference, possibly. So, next, do you have what's your signature style? What would you classify your signature style on the buildings? Do you have a style that
We do not have a signature style.
it's just whatever fits the community and whatever you work with the community?
One of the slogans we always say, we want to reinforce a sense of community. So that means we don't go into a community with a style. It's what's appropriate to the building. I showed you that 1875 courthouse. The building told us what to do. It's like this old house. You can only do what the building will allow you to do. The house will allow you to do. Your building has a certain vernacular to it. It has a certain style to it. We would respect that. I mean, we're not going to do something that's going to be over the top. We might show you some things that are a little more contemporary, just to help give it a little bit, maybe a little more life, or give it some, something that might enhance it. But it's not. We're starting with something already, so I don't think we're looking at anything that's going to be extraordinarily different than what you have. It will be the best that you could imagine and you can envision, but it's not gonna be something that's drastically gonna be foreign, and it would be because of where it is and because we're in Homer Glen and that's the building.
It really is context related. You know, we want something that fits in your community, not something that looks like it was placed in your community. And we look at quality finishes, quality durable materials, because we understand that, you know, maintenance is always going to be an issue day to day on your building. So we want a sense of permanence, and we also want a sense of place. And those are the two things that we look at. We don't want it to look like one of our buildings in your community. We want it to look like your community building that represents the village, the village vision.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move along. To be fair about timing for each firm and what have you, let's, I know we still got Mike, but let's remember the time frame that we're trying to work to. You all have worksheets here. Trustee Costa, go right ahead.
Two real quick ones for you. What do you think is the most important thing your firm does to ensure that the costs and expectations of the project are in line and that we don't see any big surprises during the construction phase? What do you think is the most important thing you do?
I think the most important thing that we do is our early planning efforts. It's going through and doing a thorough evaluation of the building, and then it's doing a thorough evaluation of the space needs program, so we have a full understanding. We have all of our data in place so we can do our design correctly. If you don't have that data in place, then you're just going to run into unforeseen costs that are going to come up later on. You know, I didn't anticipate that was a bearing wall. Well, we're going to have to move that to accommodate the design. We want to make sure we have all that out front, so then when we're doing our design, it's taken into consideration. And like I said, our full-time cost estimator is huge in our company. It's the only company I've worked at that's had that, and like I said, he's been here for over 30 years. And he knows each one of our designers backwards and forwards. So when they come up with a plan, he has a full understanding what that is from day one. And as we move through the building, early on, he's able to come up with really accurate, credible cost estimates with very little information, really design schematic information, because he understands where we're coming from. And because we do that, that allows us to design more into your project, because we're not having to hold a higher contingency earlier. We can kind of cut that down and spend more of that money in your design instead of trying to back into it later on. So it's really the upfront work that we do.
Okay, and then can you just give us some basic timelines here, and apologize if you, earlier, I was making some notes. Starting with the plan, you know, with the initial plan, the design, the documents, the bid, and then construction. So initial planning, how long do you think?
2 months, maybe 3 at the most. Again, we'll go as fast or as slow as the village would like us. We're going to take the time that we need to make sure we cover and think about some of the things that we're talking about into the future as well as current needs.
Okay, actual design then, would that be included in that, or once we get the concept, then you actually do design? How long on the design, roughly?
Like the construction document phase?
Well, the design. So we would go from program analysis to building.
To the actual, yes.
Right. Then we would go into a design phase. It might be another 2 to 3 months. And each of these phases, we're doing cost estimating, to your point as well. So we're constantly reviewing that cost estimate, and then get into construction documents. You know, again, it depends on scope. So these are just broad numbers. But I'm thinking probably 3 months that we might have for construction documents. That's getting ready to go out for bid. 2 months I like to give for bid. 1 month for the general contractors or the tradesmen to give numbers back, a couple weeks to review them, and then make them to the board and get approval. And then construction really is going to depend on how much we define, but if we define this as we were saying, maybe working through the winter, as the mayor said, I think it's a small enough building that probably 5 months would be a doable time. It's 5 to 6 months. Again, I don't know exactly what we're doing in there, but just going on the size and the scope of what the project might be. So
Okay, so from what you just basically told me, approximately 18 months from the first day, once you sign an agreement with us, until you hand us the keys and we're done. Rough numbers, we wouldn't hold it to it.
Right, because that front, out of that 18, that first 6 months or 7 months is planning and kind of getting it ready, and then the last 6 being that you would need. And again, that can accelerate to taking more time based on how we want this to work as far as when we bid it.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Daniel and Larry. Nice presentation.
Mayor, I
Yes.
just had one comment. You mentioned that you had done Payless Park, and I just wanted to say, I've been in the Payless Park Village Hall a couple of times, and it is a very nice facility. And it's tucked into kind of a residential area with a lot of trees around it. It's a little hard to find because you don't really realize that's what it is. Very nice though.
And the reason that building looks the way it does as far as architecture is because of the WPA building that's right next to it that we started, and that's where they were. So that has that vernacular and that sense of place.
Very
Again,
nice.
that's unique to Palos. Thank you, though.
Thank you,
Mayor.
Daniel, thank you, Larry, and we'll be getting back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right. Before we bring the next group in, let's take a 5-minute recess, and we'll let them have a chance to set up, and we'll reconvene, and let's call it, it's almost 7:35. How about 7:40? We get back in here and get it going. Okay? All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to call this meeting back to order. The second firm to present this evening is White & Company. White is represented this evening by Steve Collins. I'll let you introduce your team, and please begin the presentation when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, very much. My name is Steve Collins. I'm Vice President of Government Programs for White & Company. We're thankful you have us here tonight, and we hopefully are looking forward to the opportunity to working with you, and we hope at the end of the night we prove to you that we'll be the ideal partner to go forward with this in this challenging assignment. White & Company has done a number of these remodeling, repurposing projects. We most recently finished the City Hall, Chicago City Hall renovation, the Village of Lamont, Romeoville. We repurposed an old Montgomery Ward's building into a courthouse, so we understand the challenges and what goes on at these projects. So I don't want to take up much more time. I'd rather have Jason and his team talk to you about specifically the project. And if you have any questions as we go along, if they're not clear, please don't hesitate to stop and we'll answer any questions.
The way we have this set up tonight, Steve, is we'll let you do your presentation, and then we're going to have questions and answers, and we'll go right down the road. Let every trustee, have their questions answered. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Go right ahead.
So I hope you can hear me okay if I'm standing up here.
You know what? Whether you stand or you sit, it's no matter. Whatever you want to do.
Okay, good. I'll feel more comfortable standing up for a little bit here. So I'm Jason Dwyer, project executive with White & Company. I head up most of our public sector assignments, so I'll be leading this assignment as your project manager if we're so fortunate to be chosen. The group we have here today really is our operating team. So, we don't want to bring out a sales team, people that you're going to see one time and then never see again. This is a group that's going to be working with you day in and day out. All of us have direct experience working on public sector projects and specifically Village Hall projects as well. So let me introduce the team. Andy Joseph. Andy will be our lead designer on this project, so his responsibility will be from the early programming stages of the project and then really pulling the entire assignment together, doing the planning, how the project's going to come together, how we fit the spaces together. And he's going to be partnered with Janet Luget. Janet Luget heads up most of our significant interior design work. So she's a principal with the firm, vice president, heading interiors group. Janet has a very strong knowledge of workplace standards, different strategies now, newer trends in terms of how interior environments are put together. So Janet will be working closely with Andy to really develop those standards and to really bring those to bear. It's really about creating these great interior environments that staff are going to enjoy working in, public's going to enjoy coming to, and can work together cohesively in those environments. Last but not least is Dave Gasson. Dave will be really our senior project architect on this assignment, handling most of the technical aspects of the project. So we start getting into the nitty-gritty of how the components will come together structurally or how we put together mechanical systems. Dave's going to really be leading up that entire effort. So this is really our core working team for the assignment, but that's not all we're going to have as part of the project. On the organizational chart board you see over here, you can see that we have MEP engineers, structural engineers, civil engineers. Now, we might not need civil engineers on this assignment if most of it's interior components, but really the message is we have all of those engineering disciplines in-house. And we feel that's a great benefit rather than having to hire out to an individual firm or separate group that does mechanical or electrical. All of our engineers are in-house. We all sit right next to each other in the same office building, so it's really easy for us to collaborate and really share ideas and brainstorm and put things together to make sure that we can create the best environment for your Village Hall and the needs that you have. Beyond that, another big component of our operation is we have a group of professional construction managers. In many instances where we do design work on a project, we're also hired to provide professional construction management services. So what that means is we'll basically take the job and make sure we execute it from a construction standpoint as well, where we'll go out and directly hire all the individual sub-trades and bring the project through really from start to finish. And while that, what we can do with that is we can basically have our estimators be involved in the process very early, and that's a way for us to basically control the costs, make good decisions about the costs, what the things are going to require as we start putting the design together. And ultimately, even if we don't, if we're not hired to do that part, we still have all those professionals in the construction side part of the project to really make sure it's a good, successful project. It makes the design better as we go through. So we have a variety of in-house folks that will be bringing to bear on the project. We know that you're going to be moving all of your village hall operations over there, all the disciplines, building department, planning, all those. In addition, we understand that you want to have a community center component to it, which includes some senior functions, as well as the sheriff's policing function that you guys have as well. So we know what's going to be going into the Woodbine golf course and what's going to need to be converted. We've also had the opportunity to spend a little bit of time there, walk through the space. So we know that on the west side of the facility, there's the larger venue spaces, a little higher ceilings, and some bigger spaces with the banquet facility. In the center, you've got the pro shop with the golf operations, and on the east side, your bar restaurant function. So we have a lot of thoughts. I mean, as Steve said, we've done a lot of village hall projects, so we have a lot of ideas and thoughts about how best to accommodate your functions in there. But really, we treat every project as a special project. So we don't like to come in with a preconceived notion of how it can be put together. We need to really spend time with you and the folks that are going to be operating out of the facility to craft the best unique solution that'll work best for you. So on that vein, I'm going to turn it over to Andy real quick to talk a little bit about our process and the game plan about how we go together and putting a program together.
Great. And just briefly, as Jason said, this is your building, and our interest is your interest. So before we try to put pencil to paper and sketch up any ideas for you, we need to learn more about how you will be working in here, in this building. And it's helpful to us to have worked with you in the past. In 2006, did a space needs analysis for the village administration to find out what your needs would be over a long-term period. And this was kind of a comprehensive analysis looking at a 20 and 30-year phase. So it may not be real applicable today, but it's a good foundation, we think, for us to understand you a little bit. Now, things, of course, are different now, and we understand that the village manager has been doing a lot of internal inquiry and finding out about space needs, so I think you're well along the path towards figuring out exactly what kind of things need to go in here. So for us, it'll be a lot of confirmation at the beginning of what spaces need to be incorporated into the building. And that will be my job in working together with Janet, because the space planning and the furniture planning will be very much integrated. This is very much an interiors project. So we'll be meeting with Cam and people that work in the building to inquire about some of the special qualities, like what the things that they would value about daylight coming into the space, about issues of visibility, who do they need to see, where do they need some privacy, what kind of working relationships do they have. And this will give us the opportunity, before we try to design something, to really understand how the internal workings will lay out in there. So that'll be our initial job to get things rolling.
Once we get past that, then it's really about taking that program or that analysis that we have and finding out the best way to utilize the existing building. So we know that this is going to be a renovation project, or we called it a repurposing project, to convert what's currently a clubhouse function and has very specific uses for that operation into things that will mesh well with the work that we'll have done with you in the programming phase of the project. So in our experience on doing projects like this, Steve mentioned a couple of them that we've done recently to repurpose some older facilities and convert them into a newer modern use that's specific to your operation. We've really gained a lot of experience in that and identified 4 consistent considerations that come up on every one of these projects. And they really have to do with things like identity, community, how you interact with the community, the operations of the facility, and then probably the most important that we see is trying to really leverage those existing assets and find the best way to make use of those assets. So I'm going to have Dave talk a little bit more in detail about some of those considerations and our experiences in that venue.
Thank you. So first, identity. That is essentially how you're going to be presenting yourself to the community. Now, the building that you'll be moving into was originally built for a different purpose. So you'll need to decide what pieces of that building you want to keep, that you like, and the pieces of the building that perhaps need to be updated to accommodate your needs. Now, when we do that, we'll want to look and evaluate the characteristics of the building, possibly on the exterior that you may want to enhance, possibly on the interior that you may need to enhance to meet the needs of the new Village Hall facility. Now, we've done several projects, one in particular that involved a lot of exterior updating that I'll point out is the Seton Computing Center at the College of DuPage. That was a building that essentially started out as a concrete bunker, more or less. And we put on a dramatic addition on that building that completely changed the look of it and really elevated the feeling of that space for the staff and students that occupied that building. Now, the other end of that spectrum is interior remodeling. As Stephen mentioned, we converted an old Montgomery ward into a new courthouse for the Kane County Branch Courthouse project. If you were in that space today, you would have no idea that it used to be a Montgomery ward facility. All the interior was gutted and remodeled and elevated to the level that it needed to be for its courthouse function. Now, you can do some kind of combination of that as well. I actually recently worked on a project for the Lamont Village Hall. Now, some of you may or may not be familiar with that facility, but they had an old staircase that went right down and bisected the main first floor of the building, and consequently dividing the operational spaces in half on the two sides of the staircase. The staircase also incidentally led to what should have been the main door of the facility, but had been relegated to use as an emergency exit because that didn't connect well to these two operational spaces. In fact, it was so obvious that this door was supposed to be the main entrance that they had to put permanent signage on it, directing you to the door way off to the side that you had to walk through to get in there. So one of the things that we developed as a solution for that was to move that main staircase off to the side, opening up that center area where we were able to consolidate the operational functions into a new main lobby space, which was a dramatic improvement both aesthetically and functionally over what they had previously had. The building also got its main entrance back in the process. So now this prominent main entrance that they had at the building was something that people in the community could easily use, walk through, easily identifiable. These were simple changes in the building layout, but they had a profound and dramatic impact on the way that the building operated. Now, community is also important, and that's going to include what the community priorities are for this project. It's our understanding that Homer Glen is a very sustainable community, so thought will have to be put into how that's incorporated in the project. Also, the functions of the space that need to be incorporated in this building to accommodate the community. It's also our understanding that there's some consideration that perhaps a senior space may be a component of this facility. Now, that's a significant function to add to the space and try to mesh with the operation of the Village Hall. Now, I'm actually currently working on a project for the Mundelein Village Hall where they expect heavy community use in the building. So they've prominently located a community room at the front of the building off of their large main lobby. We actually have a graphic of the concept for that space on our board. Now, that's set up in a way that as people walk into the building, there's a transparent connection between that lobby and the community room. So when the community walks into the space, they immediately feel like it's theirs, that they own it. It's built for them. The Village of Mundelein actually went a step further on that project and elevated all the finishes in that space, in the lobby and the community room, to ensure that the community understood that they were the most important part of that project. Also, the way that it's set up divides the operational space for the Village Hall and the public space for the community with that main lobby, which allows them to safely and securely separate those village operations, which is a very important key aspect of being able to set this up as a community facility. And so all those operational type of expectations will have to be thought through as part of this process. And actually with that, I'm going to turn it over to Janet.
Stemming from what Dave said, and thanks Dave, it's extremely important that this facility work from day one, but also work for the future. I don't know what your terms are in the sense with how long you want to be there, 5, 10, 15 years. But it's very important to know that workplace and communities are changing and the spaces within them are changing. And so it needs to be a space that's developed to handle that change. Build in flexibility so that it's not costly you're not going to do this, as frequently as a year from now. It has to be done right the first time. So building in that flexibility is key. I wanted to cite the Chicago City Hall project. You're all going to think, oh my God, this is so big and this is so small. How can you compare the two? However, there's some very relevant factors. This was obviously an institution that had been operating the same way for a very long time. It was very tired space, but they were making a business decision to consolidate offices that were off-site in, and so there was a whole shuffle and shift that had to occur. So there was a project that needed tremendous fiscal responsibility, and so we took that seriously, but we also looked at what workplace strategies could be in place to facilitate a flexible environment and actually create efficiency within the workflow. We developed universal size offices and universal size workstations. In the past, you might have 3 different size workstations. Now we just had 1. It meant that if departments changed, if they grew or shrunk, you could actually move people in and out to like-size spaces and do it fairly easily. We also find that technology enhancements are critical to the way people work today. We instituted conference rooms that were supported with flat screens and obviously networked enabled, so that if I wanted to share information from my laptop on a screen with others, you can. There's more collaboration occurring. I don't know if you're experiencing that here in your current workspace, but it's something we'd like to share with you as to what trends we see, to see if maybe you're there or need them to be expressed and developed. But most importantly, I just wanted to say that we listen well. Andy talked about the space analysis program. While you may have some pieces in place already, we will ask you lots of questions to really understand, because we think the best solutions are cultivated with the joint conversation. That collaboration is terribly important to really settle in things. So I'm going to turn over the assets. How do we leverage them? Because that is critical to everything in the end coming together and also being very fiscally intact.
All right. Thanks, Janet. So our last point is leveraging assets. So we've talked a lot about design and design concept. Leveraging assets represents a process that we use to evaluate the building and find out what things are good about the building and can remain, and what things perhaps need to be updated, addressed, changed to accommodate your needs. It's important to go through this process and identify all the things that are going to have cost impact on the job, so that those costs can be understood as you make decisions about what you want to do or need to do for the facility. So one of the things that we'll do in this process is look at things that perhaps might on the surface not be great and turn out to be assets, things that on the surface that might turn out to look like they're perfect and can be reused, but we need to identify if they'll work in your new space. For instance, we had a private tour from the previous owner and learned a lot about the existing building. And it looks like all the doors, windows, the roof on the building, all updated recently within the last decade. So that's a good sign. But as we go through this process and develop what you're going to use the facility for, it may turn out that some of those things may or may not need to change. Conversely, there are going to be things that perhaps may not initially appear to be an asset that are actually a real benefit to the project. Generally speaking, a long, narrow building is not real conducive to laying out consolidate spaces. But in your situation, where you're looking at having multiple different types of spaces, whether it be the village operations, a senior space, the sheriff space that needs to be accounted for, the long, narrow building may actually lend itself to more effectively addressing those spaces. It's also going to be helpful in the fact that there are a lot of windows on the north side of that building, and it's going to be much easier to actually get light deeper into that space when you have that long, narrow building. So again, we'll go through the entire facility and try to identify these types of things and really address the costs that we think need to be taken into consideration, so that when you're making decisions about what you need to do in that space, those can all be included. I'll close with the statement that our goal, or what we want to accomplish, is provide you with the best possible building within the dollars that are available for the project.
With that, we want to just share with you some of our initial thoughts, but we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. And then if we could, at the end of the questions, we have a brief closing we'd like to give.
Okay.
What I'll do then is we'll open it up to the board members. I'll start first. I chaired the committee, the selection committee. I've seen this presentation, so I won't use up the other trustees' time. I'll lend it to them. I'd like to thank you for coming tonight. I think you're a very professional firm and highly qualified to do this job. With that being said, instead of going in a straight order or anything, I'll randomly select trustees, and we'll start with trustee Yukich.
The way it is right now, it's a golf course over there. And we're discussing keeping him on for another year after he's working it out this year, and we want to extend another year. With that being said, in that building scene, you did walk through it, you saw how it was set up. It was set up in 2 stages. So everything is separate from each unit. If we decided that we wanted to keep him open for another year, could you work within the guidelines of doing half the building for, basically the village hall is what we're worried about. We want to get out of here, we want to save the rent that we're paying, put it in our own building. And could you work with it?
What's the impact of that?
Sure, we could. I guess question I have, I mean, thinking about it from how it's being used right now for the golf course, I guess that would be the pro shop right as you come in, and then probably the bar restaurant functions on the east side?
The pro shop would be on our side too.
Okay.
So basically the restaurant,
Okay.
where the hallway ends, the slant hallway, when it ends, everything on the other side would be village.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we work a lot of times where we have to phase projects in, where we'll start working on a portion of it and then transition into a later date the other sections of it. In fact, we're doing some work right now for the DuPage County Health Department where it's an active operating building. They've got all their staff in there, where we've been going through a strategic renovation floor by floor, space by space. I think the key to that really is doing the right upfront planning and making sure that we're clear on the stuff that we do in the early phases is aligned such that when you come back and do some other work in a later phase, you're not throwing something away that you've already done or having to redo something. I think the other aspect that we look at there is timing, how long. You know, you mentioned a year. So that might be a situation where you've completed the design. It's probably a good idea to look at the design holistically so that you design what your end plan is and then execute just on the first phase. That way you make sure that you get it right the first time. But some of it comes down to timing in terms of what the costs of that are. So if we were working with you in that arrangement, we would try to lay out more detail for you to show you what the cost implications of doing a phase project like that might be. Depending on the timing, you may decide that if you can plan it such that you can roll from one phase right into the other. You might do a strategy where you bid it all at once and just let the contractors know that they have to, execute a first part and then move into the second. But if there's a big enough gap, you probably want to bid it as 2 separate projects just because of the way the market transitions. So we're very comfortable working through those kind of iterations with you to come up with the best solution and giving you the information you need to make that kind of decision in terms of what the cost and schedule implications might be.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. How about trustee Suisse?
Thank you. I just had a couple. What challenges do you see with that building, the way it is now?
Well, there's probably a couple things. Dave mentioned this idea of it being a narrow building and just trying to get the right type of arrangement of spaces. I think because you have a variety of different functions, there's maybe some benefits to that in terms of trying to create some separate identities for the different components, whether it's the community space, the village hall space. But I think, for us, anytime you're doing a renovation of an existing building, even if it is not that old of a building and it's had some upgrades, we like to try to spend a lot of time in the upfront phases of projects, doing a lot of due diligence investigation within buildings. Like Dave mentioned, you run into situations where, let's say you might have a new rooftop unit that looks to be in really good condition. Well, it might be in really good condition to support the functions of the banquet hall that's there right now, but if you try to convert that to a number of private offices to support the village hall operation, you might need to make a lot of changes to that system. And sometimes you find cases where it's just not, it's cost prohibitive to try to make changes like that. We had a similar experience in the Randall Road branch core we did for Kane County, where they had an existing rooftop unit that was only a handful of years old that had just been put in there. But because of this very specific operation for the courtroom function there, it couldn't meet the parameters for acoustics. So we had to do a complete retrofit. We ended up actually using that unit to serve a different area and bringing a new unit in to serve that. So it's really, for us, the biggest issue is evaluating what that existing asset is and trying to find the best way to make use of it so that you don't get yourself caught by surprise later in the process, which, in the midst of construction, for example, where it starts costing a lot more money.
So the grade and the ramps,
I
something
think
you can work with?
You can. I mean, it's a matter of, trying to find the best way. I think you want to segregate spaces around that. That's definitely an issue, where it ramps up to that one side. But it's hard. That's a thing that's going to be difficult to change because of how the building was developed. So I think it's a matter of just identifying that up front, and as we look at the planning for the facility, trying to lay out the spaces in a way that that doesn't become an obstacle to the functionality of the space itself.
I do just want to build off that quickly and say, I actually think the biggest challenge is identifying how you want to use that space. The building itself, from what we've learned from it, from our tour through the building, appears to be in good shape. And it's really a question of how you want to break that up. And those are all upfront questions that we have to ask and work through. And once you get past that, though, all the other issues, I think, are achievable. And you may find yourself making decisions on what's going to end up going where in the building based on that initial evaluation of what's going on inside currently.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, how about Trustee Sabo?
Okay, the second floor. I understand it has to have an elevator. Now, I'm talking about costs of elevators, or what would you suggest for the second floor usage, and what do you have to say about the elevator?
Well, it's a big expense, and for that second floor in that building, it's not very much space to try to accommodate through using an elevator. So I think you really have to evaluate how you want to use that space. Now, the way the accessibility code works is the trigger for those requirements start to occur when you start doing work in those areas. So if you were to not touch that space, in theory, you wouldn't have to make any changes, you wouldn't have to provide accessibility to that space. It's when you start renovating that space, once you touch an area, you have to then make that area accessible. So again, that's all part of asking these questions up front, how you want to use this space, what can you use it for in a way that will not trigger that requirement. My initial reaction to that would be, you will probably not want to make that investment in an elevator unless you have to.
You don't want to make an investment, okay. Right.
I think it depends on if you can identify a really good strategic use for that space, then it's possible. But I think the point Dave's making is that, it's a return on investment analysis, I think. If you're not finding that you have good functions that really belong on a second floor that makes sense, then it's difficult to plan to just make that kind of investment.
Okay. The hall entrance, as it is large. Do you see any changes or any thing that could be added to that area or changed? Is it an advantage?
The main entrance from the to the building, at the center of the building? What you meant?
The front entrance.
Main entrance.
It has the balcony.
Yes.
And then it has the balcony that
overrides
right,
the deep space.
right, right.
I think one of the nice features of that, it's a lot of times we like to create an entry that is easy to understand for people coming to the building. I think a lot of times people that are coming to do business with a village, they're not 100% certain exactly how that goes. Maybe they're coming in for a permit to do a deck off their house or something, and it's not something that they do every day. So probably the best thing to do with an entry point like that is to make it very clear and easily understandable. We like to try to organize kind of a central sort of customer service interface and wayfinding right as you walk into the building. What's nice about having a higher volume space like that is it adds a little bit of prominence, gives you some stature as a village hall that you can take advantage of at that point. And, if you can have an immediate customer service interface that includes the building department and planning and finance and that, you can organize all that together, gives you opportunities to have some efficiency in terms of how the workflow happens, and then have, clear designations as to where you'd go for community functions or the boardroom and those kind of things. So that's, to me, an asset of the building. It's just a matter of crafting it in the right way, you know, maybe where the pro shop or is right now might be a nice spot to have sort of that initial interaction with the clients coming into the building.
Okay, were all of you in the building?
I have not been in it myself.
Okay, most of
Yeah.
you have been
Yep.
in the building? Okay. Do you see any other areas that you feel are assets or problems?
It's a hard question to answer until we really understand how you want to use the space.
Okay.
One of the things that we've looked at is the lower level on the facility. Again, that would be an example of something, if you want to continue to use that for storage, then that's not an issue. If that changes and you were to think that you want to use that for something else, that may be something that we want to evaluate and work with you to figure out how you would use that space. But based on the building that we've seen and walked through and what our current understanding is of how you use it, it appears that that building is going to be a really nice fit for how you need to make use of it and how it needs to function.
The abundance of bathroom facilities at the front, you know, it kind of blocks some of the natural light coming from the south side of the building. So that's a little bit of an impediment, but you've got great windows looking out to the north toward the golf course now. And I think, you know, the bathrooms are there, and it's again a matter of trying to do the space arrangement to take advantage of those functions. You know, you're going to need a number of bathroom facilities when you have a larger event space like a boardroom or other types of functions. So it's a matter of just placing the pieces that you need in the right way to best utilize those pieces that are already in the building because you wouldn't want to, a lot of those things are expensive elements, things like the kitchens and that, and the bathrooms are much more intensive elements that you don't want to, you know, obliterate and then rebuild again, because that's where you start spending an awful lot of money to recraft a space.
Well, talking about money, is it possible to do this in phases if we wanted to, and how would you plan for the future, or long-range planning?
Yeah, we talked a little bit about that with the phases. It's, I think the key is, like I say, to really do the entire design up front, to really plan out exactly what you want to be at the end solution, and then decide how you need to phase it in to accommodate some existing operations if that's the process. What I could say, you know, it depends on the timing of phasing, but our experience says that, you know, if you take a project that you could do all in one, you know, one continuous project versus trying to break it into two separate phases, it really becomes a little more costly because you're extending the schedule. So you've got more time for the trade contractors to be on site, maybe a remobilization that has to happen. And I guess just to give you a little frame of reference, I mentioned the DuPage County Health Department that we're working with right now, where we've been doing a lot of phased construction. Our analysis says that, like the last project we did was about a $2 million interior renovation project there that was done in two separate phases. Our estimation is that phasing on that project added maybe 8 to 10% to the total project cost as a result of the phasing. Every project's a little bit different, but just to try to give you a little bit of frame of reference on what the potential cost impacts might be on that, if that helps.
Okay, I know that you don't know everything about what we're thinking about or our needs and so forth, but is there any building that, with a renovation, that you can compare prices with, or give us some kind of ballpark figure?
In terms of a cost per square foot for the project? Yeah, you know, for projects like this, certainly there's a lot of variables, so I'll preface with that, you know, levels of finish and that kind of thing. But what we're finding on projects like this for interior renovation is you're probably talking between $125 and $150 a square foot for project cost. So we like to look at projects, not only just the hard construction cost, but what your total project costs are, which includes, you know, design fees and all of that in the mix. So the work at the health department just finishing up, so its current data came in at $140 a square foot. The work we did at Lamont Village Hall was a little bit more than that. That project was a little bit unique because the building was a very old building that had a whole bunch of deferred maintenance items that needed to be addressed in addition to just a pure renovation of the building. So they had roofing that needed to be done and windows and a whole bunch of other things that aren't just about rearranging the internal space. So I think that project was closer to maybe $165, $170 a square foot. So some of that comes into play. It looks like we said that the building that you're going to be moving into is in reasonably good shape. So you would hope that there wouldn't be a lot of those deferred maintenance items to be addressed, and so perhaps it would be toward the lower end of that range.
Okay, thank you all very much.
Sure. Thank you. Trustee K. Janice?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for being here. And congratulations being one of the three being in front of us today. Thank you. Read through your book. Just a couple questions, if I may. One of the trustees asked this question, but I just want to ask this question in a slightly different way. What is the biggest attribute to this project that you see on the physical plan that we could utilize? What attribute do you see of this project?
Well, I can mention that I have not been inside the building, but I've gone by it a couple of times. And I think it's one of its biggest asset is its presence on the property there. I mean, it is, I can really see that as being a civic building representing the village of Homer Glen. You know, it's very distinctive, it's got a very high roof, it's expansive. So I see that as a very positive asset, just what the building looks like from the exterior right now.
Yeah, and I mean, building on that, I agree. I think the length of the building actually makes this a very exciting project. Usually when you're running into these situations, especially when you're changing the purpose of a building or the use of a building, you're typically looking at it in terms of, well, we know we're going to run into these roadblocks. How are we going to accommodate these things? But the natural layout of this building really seems to lend itself to what we've heard so far as how it's going to be used operationally. So it does make it an exciting project to try to think through those possibilities. And again, that's a process that we have to go through with you, but I do think that plays into the asset category that Andy has mentioned.
The corridor is a major conduit from beginning to end, and it's a wonderful opportunity. You could bring in community artists, you could have displays of historical pieces. There's wood bowls in the mayor's office that somebody has carved, it's ash or elm or whatever, but I mean, this could be a wonderful opportunity to find opportunities to speak to the community in the nature of that conduit, just in terms of space. I'm not talking about systems, it's not my forte, but in terms of space, I think you do have some great opportunities.
Thank you. One other question with any design. How would you perceive what our layout now is? And there was a little touch on that in the beginning. You brought up a needs analysis that was conducted many years ago. And for the sake of discussion, I asked this question before, but let's say that's apropos today. Where's that needs analysis at? Where are we at on that needs analysis if we fast forward it today, and where you see it in 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now? I don't know what the needs analysis is that you kind of brought out. I haven't seen that.
Well, it may have been, it was a different administration, it was a different economy, and things were moving in a different trajectory at that point. But it's interesting that if you look back into this report, 2006, the population of the village was 22,000 people, I think, and our evaluation at that point was that you needed to have a village hall of about 15,000 square feet at that time. I think the building that you're looking at is roughly about that size, and the population now is something like about 24,000 people, right? So just on the surface, it sounds like a pretty good fit if this analysis was still right. But I think there may have been a few more functions in this building than you're thinking of now. The sheriff was going to have a presence in this, but I think it was a little bit more space for them. Several different offices and things like that. I don't know if you're thinking about that same kind of a thing today. But what this didn't have in it was a community center or senior center, a place like that. So that may be something that would change it. So it's hard to compare what this said, whatever this is, 8 years ago to what we're going to learn now as we start to talk to you. Is that kind of the question
does.
you
What
had?
you're saying is approximately 15,000 square feet, if I understand it. I'll paraphrase and correct me if I'm incorrect.
Okay.
The needs analysis in 2006 was approximately 15,000 square feet based on the population at that time. Now we're approximately, well, there's debate over whether 24 or 25,000 of the last census, but let's, for the sake of it, 24,000 some odd people. But on this, paraphrasing again, this needs analysis of 2006. Did not encompass any community center for seniors or any other activities. So 15,000
It was village
was
administration.
basically for administration, strictly for administration.
Building department, sheriff's office.
Okay, okay, thank you. That's, Mr. Mayor, that's all questions I have.
Okay, thank you. Trustee DeVivo?
Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation. I make a comment about Lamont Village Hall. I've been there many times, and the old building, you're absolutely right. It was, you walked into the sheriff's office, actually, and walked through the doors to get back into the, yeah, it was not a good place. And what you've done with it, it's really remarkable. It's very, very, it's very nice to be in there. Nice meeting room on the side. I've gone in there, had meetings there, so very, very nice job. I wanted to ask you a question. You know, you're known for your green, as a green company. What would you do to incorporate green building into the remodel?
I think there's a couple things. You know, one of the things I forgot to mention, one of our primary teammates in support on these projects is Lois Fitzale. She's our Chief Sustainability Officer, and you're right, we are a very green and sustainably focused organization. We've had the good fortune to work on a number of LEED certified projects, and even if they're not a LEED certified project, we try to incorporate sustainable strategies into every project we do. We're finding more and more that there's a lot of simple things that you can do that before were kind of more of a big issue, but the basics of incorporating recycled content and using local materials and that, those are kind of commonplace at this point. What we're really focusing on these days is trying to find ways to do energy savings. I mean, those are the strategies that are going to really pay dividends for the long term. And, you know, oftentimes, you know, this is something we'll be looking at from a HVAC standpoint, looking at the equipment that's there. It may be good, it may be in, you know, reasonably new shape in that, but it may not be very efficient. And so if you weigh the balance of, well, you know, maybe I've got a piece of equipment that's only 8 or 10 years old and it's got another 10 years life to it, if you said, hey, I can either replace it with a more energy efficient piece of equipment that is going to save me operating dollars for a period of time, we try to look at that kind of life cycle cost analysis. We've actually had some really interesting projects lately that, you know, where we've got to incorporate a lot of more advanced strategies that you don't get to on every project. We're working on a LEED Platinum or proposed LEED Platinum certified facility for the Naperville Park District, where we've got photovoltaic panels for power generation, done some very extensive daylighting using solar tubes. I don't know if you're familiar with that technology. It's like a skylight, but really focused. And the other thing we've done there is it's called a living wall, a biofilter. So all of the return air from the facility is drawn through plant medium to basically cleanse the air and recirculate it. So one of the most significant parts to that is every facility by code has to have a certain amount of fresh air from the outside that has to be brought in. And you know that if you're bringing fresh air in the middle of winter at -10 or -30 this past winter, you know, it costs a lot of money to heat that up to a comfortable temperature. So by using this living wall biofilter, we can minimize the amount of outdoor air we have to bring in, because we're basically cleansing the air and adding the oxygen back into the air through the growing medium and saving a lot of money as a result. So we have a whole bunch of ideas like that that we're, you know, we like to explore. We like to try out some new technologies and make sure that they work and use them on projects. So for us, we like to do like a sustainable charrette at the beginning of a job to just lay out all these. Now, some of them you'll say, well, I don't know about that living wall, that sounds kind of crazy, maybe we don't want to do that, but we like to present you with the opportunities and let you make an informed decision about, you know, what's going to be best for your facility. So it's about just testing out all the different options. But like I say, I think one of the biggest things we're focusing on right now is energy savings, because that's something that's going to pay dividends down the road for you, and everybody's trying to save dollars these days.
Yeah, I see the structure as being a challenge when it comes to heating, you know, the facility, and well, like you said, the windows are all on the wrong side. So, I mean, it offers light, but it also it's cold.
Yeah.
So that would be a challenge, I think. But keep that in mind. Obviously, we are, I think, very open to that type of construction, and we would really like to see some of those examples as it moves
Yeah, we
forward.
could take you on tours of some of the facilities that we've done. In fact,
well, even your facility.
We'd love, yeah,
So
right. We've done
you
a lot
could
of things
tour-
at our own
yeah.
building too. We're a LEED certified building, and so we'd love to have you come out and visit our facility or take in a tour of some of the other ones that are close by that we've done, and get you a chance to see some of that technology up close and personal.
And there's another whole side to the sustainability question, which is really about the quality of the indoor environment where people work. And I think that building gives you opportunities along those lines that
Right.
would come from the HVAC system, fresh air, the daylight, the views out into the park, the materials that go in, and Jason was mentioning things that don't have toxic outgassing and things like that. So those are big opportunities in that building that I think would benefit the users for a long time.
And I know this building they don't, you look at it and there's no walls in it, and then they put the walls up and you freeze to death, or you're dying from the heat. And I've worked in the buildings downtown, I know what that's like. They were never designed to have as many walls as they tend to put up. So you're either freezing or you're dying. So it's, I know there's challenges and I can see how this building, I'm trying to think, how would you break this up and still have people comfortable, working conditions. So
Yeah, if you have
be challenging.
if you have one HVAC unit with one thermostat and you've got 8 offices,
I know.
somebody gets to have the thermostat, and the rest of them are kind of at that person's mercy. So, yeah, those are,
That's why I think that some of this stuff probably will have to be replaced, upgraded, or whatever, and it might be that time to look into some of the newer technology. Sure.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Costa?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, what do you think is the most important thing your firm does to ensure that the costs of the project stay in line with our expectations and that there's no big surprises partway through construction?
Well, I think I mentioned it before that in addition to being a design firm, we have a whole group that focuses on construction. And so on every project, whether we're doing the construction management as well or if it's just design, we always have an estimator from our pre-construction group that's embedded in the design team. So Randy Jardine would probably be the person that would be assigned on this project. He works closely with Dave and I on a lot of our public sector projects, has a real good understanding of what those costs are. And so at every stage of the process, we weigh our decisions based on what we think those costs are. And for, Dave said it, it's for us about trying to create the best space we can within your budget. It doesn't do anybody any good for us to create the best space we can that you can't afford. So, we take that seriously. Down to the point where in the projects we do actually execute the construction on, we're willing to provide a guaranteed maximum construction cost, project cost, early in the design process. So under a traditional delivery process, you would complete all of your design and construction documents and you'd go out to bid, and you really don't have a firm commitment on what those costs are until the day you open those bids. Oftentimes, we'll basically, at the completion of design development, before we've completed construction documents, provide you with a guaranteed maximum construction cost. So that's something that we can do as an added benefit. But even if we don't do that, we take the cost seriously and we make sure that we have an estimator working with us throughout the design process so that we can really balance our design decisions against the costs at every step of the process.
Okay, thank you. And then can you just give us a quick timeline here for the project, let's say from the planning stages through design, documents, bidding, and then construction phase? How many months for the planning?
Sure. So a lot of times what we find on that is it depends on how much work our clients have done up front and how much interaction we need to do. We want to take the right amount of time to do that initial planning so that we're not just trying to race to a finish line only to find out that we've missed 5 steps along the way, or we really haven't gotten the right kind of understanding of what you need done. But I would say from our experience on projects like this and providing a reasonable amount of time to really understand what your needs are and provide you with a good design solution, that the design phase is probably somewhere in the order of 4 to 6 months or so. And then, you'd be ready to move into your construction process. Then it's a question of the phasing. So on a typical interior renovation project like that, we can do them, we've seen them done as fast as 10 weeks. We do a lot of school projects that have to be done over the summer, and they have to be done very quickly. But a lot of times if you go that quick, you're doing some overtime and that, and it adds a little bit of dollars to it. But maybe a more reasonable time frame again for the construction side is similarly maybe another 4 to 6 months. And then if you phased it, it's a question of, each successive component of that, and then whatever your time frame is in between.
Okay, so just one more question, Mr. Mayor. 4 to 6 months would be from your plan all the way out to bid documents?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Well, guys, to be fair to everybody, that the 3 finalists and what have you, you wanted to make a wrap-up statement. You've got about 7 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
All right. You might not need that much.
We very much appreciate having us here tonight. My role in all of this is the team was talking tonight. These are the people you're going to be seeing day in and day out in this project. My role as the principal in charge is to make sure 2 things. 1, that you're delighted in what they're doing. And 2, that White & Company provides them the necessary resources to make sure that your job is successful. So you will see me not the first day and the last day. I'll come over and talk to you. Say, what do you like, what do you don't like? Because there's nothing worse than us getting halfway through and things are buzzing and people aren't feeling good about something. They don't want to talk to the project people. So I'll be around. So that's my goal. And hopefully this pleasant conversations we won't have to worry about. We are owned by one gentleman. His name is Mark White. There is Mr. White. And Mr. White learned this from his grandfather who started the company and from his dad who took it over to Mark now as the 3rd generation, that we're getting ready to leave one of these projects. We asked for the project. And people say, well, why should you choose White? I'd like to give you 4 reasons why we think you should choose White. 1, we have recent relevant experience. Not only on projects like Lamont, Chicago City Hall, the Health Department of DuPage County. Also, it's this team. This is the team that worked on this project. We're not bringing in someone who has not. All the way up and down, the people that Jason will rely on to support these 4 guys have worked on the other projects. We're not bringing in someone who doesn't have public sector experience, doesn't understand public sector codes and how you do things. So it is recent, relevant experience. Some of them, as Jason mentioned about the construction management, we were construction management on that risk basis for Lamont. We were a construction manager on that risk basis for the city of Chicago. We were a construction manager for the Elwood Village Hall on that risk basis. What at risk means is that if we tell you it's $2 million, 40% through the design, and it comes in at 2.1, we eat the 100 entirely. If it comes in at 1.9, we give you the $100,000 back. We don't believe in shared savings. It's your money. Okay? So that's how we'd operate. We'd be more than happy. I realize this is a design experience, but that option is up there if you want to do it. Expertise in remodeling, repurposing projects. This is just a handful of projects we've done. We do 90% of our work, it's probably 85 now, in the public sector, with schools, with municipalities, with counties. We understand how to work in an environment that we are remodeling. This is not new for us. These are just some of the projects we've worked on. 3, we call it integrated delivery. What does integrated delivery mean to us and the advantages to you? Excuse me. Every person that works on this job will be in White & Company's Darien office, which is 20 minutes from here. Okay? And mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, plumbing engineers, the civil engineers if they're needed, the structural engineers, the estimators, our chief and sustainable officer. They're all in our office. That's where we're located at. We just put a little sign up, little dots up there to see where we all sit. So we're there. So there's no learning curve in communications, in cooperation, in work processes. When you call us up, most of the time, Jason or Andy or Dave or Janet are gonna lean over the cubicle and say, hey, Homer Glen has a question on this. We're not picking up phones and waiting for answers to come back. And there's one responsible person, Jason. We as a company, as an executive in the company, hold Jason responsible. He doesn't have to call somebody else to get something else. You got one person who's responsible. And last, which we think is really important, is trust. You know, you want the person that you work with on this assignment. You're going to be in there for 5 years, 10 years, we're not sure. I mean, you have a lot more ideas on that than we do. But you're going to be working with this group to make sure it gets to where you want it to be. That's trust. You know, and it's important. You trusted us once 8 years ago to do this for you, try to plan for your future. We respectfully ask us to trust us again and let us work with you on this assignment. We think it'd be pretty cool.
Thank you very much. I want to thank you for participating in the village's selection process, and thanks for an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
We'll be getting back to you. Thank you. Okay, before the next group comes out, let's take a little recess of 5 minutes, washroom break, whatever, and we'll get back at this. Let's call it 10 to 9. Okay, I'd like to call this meeting back to order. This is our third and final architectural firm this evening. It's Williams Architects. Welcome you to the board meeting. Williams is represented tonight by its president, Mark Bushhouse? Bushhouse. Mark, I will let you introduce your team and begin your presentation when you're ready.
All right.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Yes, I'm Mark Bushhouse. I'm president of Williams Architects, and we're very grateful to be here this evening. Thanks for staying up for us. We'll try and keep this as long or as brief as you would like it to be. We want to talk a bit about our firm. We want to talk about the team. We'll talk a little bit about the facility and some ideas we've been at least kicking around to see, at least let you know how we think a little bit. And then sort of how our approach on a project, how we'll help make this a good one for you. And then, of course, we leave all the time you need for question and answers. And then hopefully at the end, you might give us a minute, if you would, to let us talk about some things about our firm that we hope might make a difference. So, to get into this, the team is always organized around our clients. The village here would be our client, and we do a very good job of listening and learning what your goals are, and we adopt those goals as ours. So, the village of Homer Glen, of course, is the originator of the goals. And then our team, we're going to have, this is a group here. We're all stretched out. My gosh, we're huge. Anyhow, so me, Mark Bushhouse, I'll be the leader on this project. I will be involved hands-on with your staff, doing programming, evaluating the facility, getting the initial concepts understood and budgets working. That's my role on projects like this, having done municipal work for over 20 years. With me is Scott Lang, Vice President of Williams Architects. Scott and I have worked together for 20 years doing municipal projects. Scott, just say hello. Hello. We'll talk more later. All right. And of course, Carrie Kutera with us. She's the director of our interiors department. We've started interiors group about 8-10 years ago, and we really have found having that integrated in our firm has really allowed us to, especially on remodeling projects, bring a level of change and improvement that you just can't achieve if you don't really focus on that. And on my far right is Steve Trippon from WT Engineering. They have worked with us again for 19, 20 years, something like that. They'll be our mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineering group that helps us evaluate and select the right systems. Talking briefly about Williams Architects, this is our 40th year as a firm. I've been there 27, you've been there 20? So we've been around there a little while. Firm's been focusing on municipal architecture throughout almost that entire time. This is the work that we do. For Scott and myself, village halls, police, fire stations is what we have done together for pretty much all of those years. So we are the most experienced team in our firm, and we will be the ones that are hands-on on your project. We certainly have done an enormous amount of addition and remodeling work, and frankly, Probably a majority of our work has been that, especially since the Great Recession, as that had its impact. A lot of municipalities have thought a little more smaller, a little more carefully about reusing facilities and working from there. I think you'll find that our team is very experienced in this. We are very green. Scott and I are both lead APs. We understand what there is to know about making a facility green. Carrie can pick all the recycled materials and some great interiors that which she can talk about later. But we are very knowledgeable in that area. And the last part, the listening, quality people service, that's something that Mike Williams, our founder, taught us all very well over all the years that we worked there. Listen to your clients. They tell them that they'll tell you what they really are looking for, and listen carefully, and then go do it. Also, so now WT, Steve, if you could talk a minute about.
Yeah, WT's been in business since 1971. The majority of our work has been municipal and park district type projects, so we team very well with Williams because they kind of parallel those projects as well. We've been working with them for about 20 years now, and we've developed a team that works on all their jobs. So the same electrical engineer, the same mechanical engineer, same plumbing engineer, same project manager will be assigned to this job. That's worked on 95% of the other municipal work that we've done with Williams. So it's a pretty trained team. We know the ins and outs of each other, what they're looking for. And with this job being a renovation job, we really want to get into the bowels of things and get in the lower level, get in the attic, see what you got, see what kind of shape it's in, see the longevity of it, efficiencies of it, and that sort of stuff to see how it's going to, work with the new layout and everything like that. We've done several similar jobs of same size and nature, and again, just the teamwork with Williams for the last 20 years, we've got it fine-tuned. So,
thank you, Steve. We took a Google Earth image and we experimented a little bit with what we might be able to do here. And let me preface this by saying, we haven't sat down, we haven't gone through space programming. There's a lot of information that we would want to pull out from you and your staff about your goals and possibilities here. But just to talk about the building you have, the building's been, as far as we can tell, really maintained quite well. And it's in good shape in a lot of ways. And frankly, based on some of the buildings we've had to work from to turn them into a municipal building, this one's a far cry further down the road of being a very good facility than some we've worked on. So as we were looking at this, what are some possibilities and things that matter to a village hall? Well, good entrance, recognition of that, good parking for visitors out front. A lot of that's already there, a good lobby. And then this area on the western section, again, what fits, how big you need. But one possibility is to put most of your day-to-day staff over here, put some countertops so people can do one-stop shopping. They can come apply for a building permit, pay for the permit, pick up the permit and leave, and everybody's close by and easy to work with. We also can have, the restrooms that are there can be for staff. This coat room could even possibly be a place for staff to meet with citizens. Again, what we try to do is create a great atmosphere for visitors to come in, receive all the service they need, have places to meet with staff, restrooms nearby, but we really like to try and keep walls and doors in place so that visitors don't just walk into the employee areas. That's just not appropriate. It puts your staff in some difficult situations, and we've heard many stories over the years of where that has been a real problem. To have citizens or anybody just wandering in. So the possibility is we could turn this into office zones. The right side could be more, maybe some public areas, some restrooms here. We even remodeled those a bit and freed up a spot that maybe it could be the sheriff's substation. Again, we haven't met with them, we don't know what they need, but generally a substation means some report writing areas, maybe an office, and certainly a citizen interview room to take reports and listen to citizen issues and concerns. So that could be a decent place to have something like that. Then that wonderful timbered area in the main eating area, we thought that might be a lovely boardroom. Well, during the years that you're there, there's even a small eating area behind it, which could be a great executive session or in a main conference room, something that could support the use of the boardroom. In the area where the bar is now, I guess it could stay a bar, but we were thinking maybe it's a multi-purpose area. And we saw in the paper some conversation about seniors. Could you even have some multi-purpose uses that would allow them to come in and use the building? Possibly. And then we're hoping maybe we could keep the existing kitchen on the far eastern portion, so that could begin to support this area for whatever uses might work for you. Again, will all this fit the way we're showing it? Are the staff areas sufficient? We looked at the staff numbers you have on your website, maybe, but the proof will be in the work that we do, and that's the math and study that we bring to it, all this programming and space needs and adjacencies that we've done so many times. We'll bring that to bear on this project and work through this and see what could really happen. With that, we also wanted to look at the front of the building and said, can we make this be a bit more identifiable as a municipal building, and possibly also have a good look for what might come into this building afterward. We thought about interrupting some of the parking along here to create a bit of an island, a little grass, maybe some flags to create some more identity off of the roadway. And then as we look at the exterior, we have a couple quick ideas. Again, haven't talked to you, don't know what you like or dislike, what styles might be appropriate. But this was an idea that said, let's create this drive-through, some pavers, flag poles, maybe some good signage out from the roadway. You can see, keep the building mostly as it is, possibly put a tower. That's something that could be recognized from the road coming and going. It could create a more municipal look to the building and sort of be that strong identifier to allow the citizens and visitors to find this very quickly. Another idea we took a look at said, well, let's not build a tower. Maybe that's a little too ambitious, but maybe we can bring some more beams and some flags on the building itself. We were talking internally about what can we do as far as facing the front of the building. The brick right now is a fine brick, but it's very light colored. There are some great stains available that we could bring that last a very long time. Can we darken the brick up a bit? Could we even look at this plywood siding? It's called T111, and it's certainly done its job for these folks over the years, but maybe we could go over that or change it out with something that has more of a stucco look, a more municipal look, and have some more longevity to it. Even on these front brick areas here, we even talked about putting some thin glue-on stone that lasts a very long time, and it looks really nice. So maybe these areas that are shaded, maybe it has that, because you've got these wonderful sort of pillars that flare out made out of stone. So again, just some quick ideas to say, look, we're not going to rebuild this building. We're going to use the masses probably substantially as they are to be cost efficient. But what are some things we could start talking about that could change this building's appearance and help people know this is the Village Hall, and this is where you come, and help folks realize that and find it. And then, of course, the Village Hall is here 10, whatever years it is. We recognize that even though they may move out, the village will in all likelihood continue to own this building. So this really is a long-term ownership, but maybe not a long-term use. So those are the things that we have to work with you on to determine how far we change this and internally and externally, and then consider what the future might hold.
And as we start working through different concepts, we computerize this stuff. We can do drive-bys. It could almost look photoreal. And we do many. We generate a half a dozen of these and come back and show you what it would look like as you're driving by, what it looks like at night. What we really do to pop that plaza out. So, as Mark said, these were a couple of quick hand sketches, and we have a lot of fun with these. We'll pool 2 or 3 different architects from the office who can't see what the other ones are doing, and then we get in a group and critique. So it's fun.
It's fun. Talk very quickly about process. You probably heard 2 rounds of process discussion this evening, so we want to be careful here. Just the basics of, as we start off, step 1 is always the conceptualizing stage, where I talked about where do you sit with staff, find out employees, what your needs are, do the very careful space programs. we have example diagrams of all these different room types and what fits, and we put that together. We have questionnaires we can use. So this is a process, our firm has developed, and I use, just project after project. In fact, we're doing a remodeling of Willowbrook's Village Hall, and we're just about a few months ahead of you on this one. So working through that process and making sure that we really get this project with the right kind of look. We know what fits, what your priorities are, and we've got a budget and scope that are really coming into alignment that meets your goals. Then from there, we go into the next step. And Scott, why don't you talk a little bit about, we get the basic design phases.
Right, yeah, I'll lead the group through schematic design, design development, the construction documents. You'll only see me typically at those meetings from our office anyway. I'll bring Steve's group in at certain times during the project, but we'll lead you through that whole process so that the time it goes out to bid, you'll know everything from the carpet that's going in to the style of doorknob we're putting in. So we've done it many times. It's very systematic. I don't do meetings that are over an hour. We probably meet once a week, maybe hour, maybe an hour and a half. And the topics that we'll bring up, you'll know them in advance. You can bring the right people into these meetings. And ultimately, I'll do a quality control at the end of each of these phases, and the most important one being the one before we go out to bid. And I like that process. I'm sort of the guy in the office that does that. As I've told your group at the first interview we had, that I literally go in my office and I get 2 weeks to find all the change orders. I close my door and no one bothers me, and I've been doing this for 30 years. I've seen just about every change order you can throw at me. So we are pretty intense quality control group in our office. And Steve's group, as he alluded to, has been working with me for 20 years, and I'll still catch a thing or two. It's caught on paper. He reads every word of it. It's caught on paper before it gets built. So we have a very, very, to brag about, our change order percentages are extremely low in this industry, extremely low. And we'll ask for that time. We're going to demand that 2 weeks. I hope we get it from you. It's very important, 2 weeks.
Saves you a lot.
And I'll be the one that ultimately, when it starts getting constructed, I'll be the one in the trailer at the weekly meetings and follow it through and do the punch list. So a little unique about our firm. Mark and I are owners of the company, and we're literally the two people that are going to follow the project all the way through. You're not going to see an architect, a 10-year architect under me, start meeting with you all the time, or be the guy in the construction. I'm the guy from these little sketches till the day you turn the key and walk in there. So we always say we can't do a lot of projects like this a year. We could only hand select a few, because that's the intense time it takes out of us. We can't do 15 of these.
Okay, to be fair to all the other firms that went through this process already, you sort of have to wrap up your presentation because we need to move on to questions and answers.
All right. Why don't you talk just a moment about the interiors, how you pick colors and finishes?
Just quickly, as Mark mentioned, I head up our interiors department, and we kind of feel that's one of the things that help set us apart a little bit, as we have interiors in-house. So myself will work closely with Scott and Mark from the very beginning of the process, through space planning, through design concepts, really to understand how the building is going to work, space planning, how furniture is going to fit in there, and then also obviously look at finishes, because we really want the architecture of the existing building and how it looks now and what we might incorporate it to all kind of tie together and work together. And then we'll certainly work with you guys to kind of select finishes that are durable and sustainable, things that last a long time, and things that are still going to look good 10, 15 years from now. So.
Okay, we're going to go through this really fast. Deerfield Village Hall addition remodeling project did a few years ago. Very happy how it came out. Clients very pleased. And in Barrington we did their Village Hall. Again, came out well. Old world look there, replicating a building that was there. Lyle Village Hall, I think I heard some of you folks may have toured. They ratted you out, just so you know. And that was a great project, some year we did with them. Wheaton City Hall, we did a big addition remodeling in that building. That was almost 20 years ago now, wow. Yorkville, this is a facility where, where this is another 10, 15-year plan for them. We had a building, we want to expand a little bit, finish it out, buy us some more time till the growth along 47 kicks in again, and we'll build something bigger later. In Oak Brook Terrace right now, we're out to bid, or about to go out to bid on remodeling their city hall, repurposing that building and a police station next door. Burr Ridge, we did their new police station. Nice pictures of Burr Ridge. And then Glendale Heights, this is the last building. Just want you to know, we've done a very recent, good quality, 10,000 square foot senior center. So if there's any conversation about what those facilities are, what goes into them, the large meeting rooms, the crafts, etc., game rooms, even have a hair salon in there, whatever we want to do, we certainly have done this many times, and here's a recent example of it. So thank you. I do have one more slide that I request a minute or two at the end to kind of talk about.
Sure, we're just trying to be fair to everybody.
No, I
Keep on saying
appreciate
things.
that, of course.
Okay, I've seen the presentation because I chaired the committee that got to the finalists. So I'm going to lend my time to the other trustees because I've already seen it. So with that, we'll start with Trustee Sabo.
Oh, all right. When you look at the entrance to the building, the interior part of it, do you see it used as it is, or do you see any changes that could be made? Is it a challenge, or is that part of an asset?
I think the size of the lobby is an asset. It allows some people to come in and not be out of room right away. I think it allows to put some countertops there for staff to service them with whatever finance or community development departments that they'd want to talk to. Nice high ceiling, nice big volume, all very nice. I think we could make it a little more municipal by changing maybe a lighting fixture in there, something a little more formal or interesting. Change some of the colors and patterns in there. I think, again, could make a nice change, but I think it's an asset, basically.
Okay, and we have a second floor. And,
Yes.
Okay. And,
go ahead.
And so how do you see that used, or what does it require? We know an elevator if we were to use it, so.
It can really probably only be used as they call unused space, which basically means storage that's not used on a regular basis. Once you go beyond that, you need an elevator, according to Illinois handicapped accessibility statutes. And so if you really want to make that space an ongoing office use or some other regular use, we'd have to put an elevator up to it.
And that is costly?
Probably in the $80,000 to $100,000 range between the elevator itself and the shaft you got to build.
Okay. As far as phasing, I know that you mentioned that in one of your projects. And is it possible to do this in phases, and how to plan for future growth?
Well, what we would do at the beginning and during this conceptual part of it, we really do the space programming to understand staff you have now and staff you think you'll hire in the near term and the functions that you do need to have in the building as a village hall. And we'll figure all that out regardless of what building it might go into. And then we can then take it to this building and see what fits well and what may not fit well, and really work through with you as the client on what your priorities are to determine if we have to make some choices about if everything doesn't fit, to look at the options of, can some of it stay here, other programs that can wait, or would we consider more changes to the building to allow it all to happen, or does it all fit? I mean, those are unknowns right now, but those are certainly the kinds of questions that our information will allow us to understand what the possibilities are, and then you can choose.
Have all of you been in the building? You
Yeah.
looked in the building?
Yeah.
Okay. Where do you see some assets or problems?
Assets are, it's been a well-maintained building. It has a large number of big spaces, which is very helpful. You don't have to start chopping up a lot of little walls to make bigger rooms or work areas. So I think that those are some very helpful things. I think some of the things that, there's space in the building that's difficult to use, like you mentioned, that second floor, nice space, tough to economically have a good use for it. There's cart storage underneath, very low ceilings. Again, great for archive storage as long as we can keep the water out of there. But, you know, can you do a lot of other things down there? Not really. So you've got that neat timber framed restaurant area, which I think is a great opportunity if we can make that into a multi-use public space. Maybe the boardroom is an option we were thinking about. So I think that's got a nice, warm, inviting character that I think we would try to take advantage of.
Okay, problems?
Well, some of the problems we don't know, like Steve said, we don't know the age or ultimate conditions or the heating systems well enough to know, do they bring in enough fresh air? Are they in good condition themselves? Can we control them well enough to create comfort levels as we might put in some offices? So that's something we don't know yet about that. The exterior of the building has that T111 wood paneling siding, which it can work for quite a while, but we wouldn't consider that to be a great long-term material for a municipal building. They do tend to get tough to maintain well as time passes, so we might want to think about some work on that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, how about Trustee K. Janis?
Yes, thank you. Congratulations on being one of the 3 selected.
Well, thank you.
To meet with us today.
I feel very privileged.
A couple questions, and one of our trustees alluded to it a little bit, but I'd like you to expand on this a little bit. What do you think the biggest attribute there is to this project? The footprint, the interior, on how you could develop that?
Well, I think the biggest attribute is it was designed from the beginning to be a public building. So it's got easily identifiable entry, it's got a great front lobby, good public restrooms right there, good circulation hallways that certainly are even larger than maybe they need to be. And then you've got, like I said, big spaces that allow public uses and options to change that I think are really going to help you on this one. And of course, the views out of it are glorious as well. So it's beautiful in that sense. So in a lot of ways, it was built to be a public building, which is what the village wants to do as its next step with this building. And I think that's helping you a great deal.
Okay, very good, thank you. I didn't know if you had a comment on that. No, you're fine, okay. As your conceptual plan here, how do you see in the future, 10, 15 years down the road, if there was going to be an expansion off this building, how your flow that you have on the concept could be managed for future development or expansion?
Knowing you're coming in here and you split down the hallway, we would think about maybe moving staff out of here and creating a connection through, maybe this building becomes a T-shape. That way these wings are not being disturbed. You can add more space here, assuming you can spare that green space for that use. And now as you come in, you can go 3 different ways. They all have air and light. We're not trying to add on to these roof forms, which might be a little more difficult.
Okay. You mentioned, you took a look at the website and staffing, what we have currently. Have you did any preliminary thoughts on needs analysis on what we have currently for staff today and what we possibly is a big question, I understand, in the future as far as what you're providing for on this location now and what you're setting up?
The reality is, until we would sit with you and learn about the rate of growth in the community that could happen in the years ahead, we certainly have averages from other municipalities of staffing ratios to population and services they provide, but I can't say we've really done that analysis for this place yet.
On the square footage, okay. Right. And one last question, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Sure.
Signature style. Do you have a signature style, any one style that you go after, or is it just whatever the community?
Right. It's all about it's all about the community. Every community has an identity where we seek to listen and find out what that is, and then do architecture. That's their building when it's done. We're just glad to be a part of the project. It isn't. We don't have a particular style.
That's it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Trustee Yukich?
Thank you for the presentation. It was very nice. I have 3 things. Could you do this plan? I
like what you said a few minutes ago about having the restaurant area, because I think that'd be a perfect community center.
Right.
So my thinking is building on the west side of the building and having the end for the police, because it has a separate entranceway, has a parking over on the side.
Yeah, right. It comes down to, is there enough room on the western side for all of village staff? And then can you also bring the sheriff's substation and fit that there as well? And I was less confident of that than saying maybe there's some space on the eastern half that could possibly hold the sheriff's substation.
All right, well, the problem that I see just with the way you've written it up on it now, because you said maybe the village hall, or the boardroom would be where the restaurant is right now. I don't know if that would be big enough, and I really would hate to rip that thing apart to try to put something in there.
Right.
But if we did it, this building was built in 2 sections.
Okay.
Where the restaurant stops was the original building, and then from there it's banquet facilities.
Yeah.
We have a situation right now where we have a landowner that, well, used to be the landowner. He is working on the golf course this year.
Okay.
We would like to extend it for a year because this process is not going to get done very quickly. We have maintenance that would be on the property, and it gives us a chance to fulfill this contract that he has with us. Would you have a problem with doing this in a phase where you did the west side first and then you did the east side, if that's the way we determine that the building would be set up?
I see. Well, it's something to look at. Is it going to, have some complexities, and will it all fit in a phasing way that allows you to get enough use out of the western half for what you want to achieve while still keeping the golf side open? I can't sit here today and say, yeah, it's going to work, or there's absolutely no way. We'd really have to find out how much of the golf facility are you going to try and keep open. Does it mean the boardroom could stay here and you'd move staff over to there? I guess I don't feel comfortable saying there's an obvious answer to that question. But phasing you can always do, but when you do that, you do push your costs up some, because when you build twice, it's always more expensive than building once.
Well, with what you just said, though, we want the village hall done first.
Okay.
We're paying rent here.
Right.
We want to get out of here
Okay.
and stop paying rent and put it towards a mortgage.
Right.
So we would want that completed first.
Okay.
So where we would stop right now, if we did it that way, is I don't know how much work you would have to do to the restaurant that's in there right now. Because it is kind of quaint. I mean, maybe spruce it up a little bit.
Right.
But it'd be something that by the time you got done with the west side, we could go into the other one, because now the 2015 season is done already. So we wouldn't be interfering them, and we are going into the winter months where the cost is also down for us for building.
Okay.
So I just wanted to make sure that you could work with that.
We've done a lot of some very complicated phasing plans on projects before to keep it all going. That first one, Deerfield, they needed to stay in that building throughout the time we worked. In fact, they even brought in trailers for a while to keep everything operational. And while, we're not, we don't think trailers are the answer to everything, but there are times when a trailer or two can give you that swing space you need on site to keep things working.
Okay. Second question. We want to make sure that the residents, staff, and the board you accept the input, you listen to what it is, and then from there we decide what's going to happen.
Right.
Would you have a problem with any of that?
That's everything we would hope for in a client.
Okay.
We present information, you decide.
All right, because I mean, the residents have this is their money we're spending.
Absolutely.
So it's very important that we have their input. Last one, what would be your cost analysis? Give me a square footage of what you're thinking.
Well, again, there's a lot of things we don't know, but something in the 100 to 150 range would seem very, very plausible on a project like this, per square foot, yeah.
Okay. That's all the questions.
Okay. And that's pretty much what you told us at the committee level, too. And
We were going to lower it, then we decided
Yeah,
not to.
that's pretty much what everybody, between 100 and 150, depending upon detail.
Yeah.
Trustee Suisse?
Thank you. Very nice presentation. I appreciate the concept and the diagrams here. That's very interesting. Just a quick question. What would you anticipate the length of the total process, with the
Design.
scope and the scale that you're dealing with, approximately?
A year and a half is probably more than we might need, maybe 14 to 16 months total. But I will say a lot of that's going to depend on the initial conceptualizing phase. We can get our work done in, 6 weeks on something like that, or even a little less. But that's all about building consensus. Have we got the right approach? Is the phasing what we want to do? Is the scope and dollars all in balance? And are you as a group confident that that's the plan you want? There are times when we come up with these options, and the board might want to look at it twice and think about it before making, a big decision. So we would never want to hurry you. We want you to be very confident of the decisions you make. So we call that reaching the consensus on the basic scope and approach of the project, and sometimes that might add a month or so to the thing. But very well spent if you need it.
Okay. And on your concepts, do you, without additional charge, you do three-dimensional?
Yes.
So all that's kind of the
how we
norm?
work, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Trustee DeVivo?
Thank you, Mayor. Very impressive portfolio.
Thank you.
You have a lot of experience, that's for sure. Just a couple questions. I look at the building, and although I see the building being very attractive from the outside, there certainly are some challenges on the inside to make banquet rooms into offices. And I've worked in enough places where that becomes a problem with heat and cold and so forth. So when you start putting walls up, you have some information, and you mentioned it, that you're into the green technology, energy efficiency.
Right.
And what would you do as far as, because when you put walls up and you have ceilings like you do here, it's going to be a challenge. What would you do to correct that?
I'll start, and Steve, maybe you can finish. I think the point is we want to do what we need to do so it's going to work well, and tell you what that's going to cost. And whatever system we can choose, Steve alluded to, we don't know how efficient these systems are. Do they bring in enough fresh air? We might be looking at decent systems, but they're just not going to be appropriate for this next use, and it might be best to make a real change in some of the mechanical systems. And Steve can talk a moment about what some of those options are. But if you want to get into some real high levels of energy efficiencies, there is, the well system that brings the earth, what's that called again? Geothermal, thank you. We use geothermal on a number of buildings, and those are very efficient. There is an extra level cost to those. And frankly, most municipalities we work with have some franchise agreements about natural gas that comes at a lower cost, or electricity. So all those things have to be weighed to figure out what's best. But Steve, if you could talk about just making these spaces comfortable.
Yeah, a lot of things with the comfort level is really during the test and balance phase of the job. We want to make sure that all of the air that we design is going where it's supposed to go. The air devices that we'll select will throw the air the distance that it needs to be thrown. We may add some low returns to make sure air gets down there and washes the room. We'll look at the equipment that's serving it and either tell you, hey, this is 5 years old, it's got another 10 years left in it. It's not the most efficient thing, but we'll have, like them with their sketches, we'll have 2 or 3 different options and construction cost estimates with those options.
The building, as when you were in it, you had to notice that there's ramps.
Yes.
Therein lies another challenge. What would you consider doing with that as far as ramps are concerned?
Well, since the corridors are wide, options are, if again, we didn't check them. Are they within handicap requirements of 1 to 12? Do they meet all those requirements? If they do, then fine. We can look at maybe putting some railings in there, and even look at who has to go where to make sure that we're not making an additional problem. And if it was more of a senior center on that side of the building, can we create an entrance on that side so you're not forcing everybody to go up and down these ramps that might find that more challenging? We could also sequester part of that hallway off and put a little lift in there if we wanted to, so that folks who just found that ramp too challenging would have another alternative.
Very good idea. Okay. Oh, all right, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee DeVivo. Trustee Costa?
Yes, thank you. What do you think, your firm, what do you think is the most important thing that you're going to do to ensure that the costs of the project stay in line with our expectations, and that we don't have any big surprises partway through the construction phase?
Well, a lot of it has to do with, Our track record is extremely good on that fact. We have told people the bad news early on costs, so we're very unpopular at the beginning of a project because they say, "You've got to be kidding me." And we'll work with you, we'll make changes to the project, you'll know what you're getting, we'll look at, what you're buying or what you're not buying, but we do a very good job of tracking costs, and we are very straightforward at what we think things cost. In my career, I've learned the lesson, we've all know that tell the client what it's really going to cost early on and figure it out from there. Our goal as a firm is no surprises.
Okay, and one of my other questions was answered, but you did touch on this earlier. What is your percentage of change order percentage, average?
On new construction, it's actually below 0.5%.
How about renovations?
Renovation is all over the map a bit because there are times when we can't see what's behind the walls and things were built radically different than what the drawing showed, and those can be 5-6%, maybe 7%. But on remodeling projects that are fairly well known, we're usually under 3%.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Costa. I'd like to thank all the trustees for the time they spent here tonight interviewing the firms. Now you wanted to make a closing statement?
Yeah. You've interviewing 3 very good firms tonight. We know these people. They're intelligent, very good architects, and we have great respect for them as colleagues. But things that are a little bit, every firm has its makeup and its ways, and things that we believe you might want to consider as you make this selection about our firm are some items about how we have done our work. You're looking at a firm here that really has dedicated its senior people toward municipal projects. This has been our livelihood, our area of expertise, our area of focus for 20 years. Scott and I have worked together, and with Carrie and Steve, we've been through this many times. And I kid around about we call Scott Dr. Lang in our office, even though he's not a doctor, but he's the guy who has the drawing sitting on in his briefcase, sitting by the door to his room a day before or 2 days before the meeting, and everything's done and ready. He runs his projects like a Swiss watch, and Steve and his engineers can attest to how he follows them through with great care and great precision. I think what we bring is you're looking at the ownership of a firm that's been around a long time, and we are the people that are going to do this project. And I think that's a big deal on a project like this. You have the most experienced people in our firm working on this project. And I think you'll also find, if you do talk to other clients, we are good listeners. We really do adopt your goals. That isn't just lingo for us. We look at how we operate, and these are the phrases that come out that talks about how we do our projects. And the track record of us not having surprises on our projects, of having communicated well with our clients, that we have met their goals, that the projects came in on budget, that we did our work on time. That's just the hallmarks of our firm. And we think those are things that might be important to this village as they have been to our previous clients. And then last, of course, we want this project. We need work. We have people that want to do this, and Scott and I want to do this project. Carrie, Steve, we want to do this project, and we would consider it a privilege, and we would be honored if you would choose us. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that concludes our interviews of the architectural firms. I'd ask that all the trustees mull over what you've heard tonight, and feel free to provide a ranking to the village manager of the firm you would most like to work with. You can simply send Manager Davis an email ranking the firms 1, 2, 3. Then we can see if there are any similarities. Manager Davis can report back the results to us next week. I want to acknowledge a special thank you to Trustee Costa, Deputy Building Official Scott Chance, and Village Manager Davis for joining me on the RFQ interview and selection panel that reviewed all 22 RFQ proposals and recommended these 3 fine firms be heard from tonight. I appreciate your hard work, and with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
First by Trustee Costa.
I second.
Second by Trustee Swees. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say nay. Meeting adjourned.